Incremental readings. This is the 16th section of the Pleasurable Guide to SuperMemo, the Fluency cycle, and it's dedicated to extracting. So part of the incremental reading flow, now we know how to import. The next is to extract. We'll see what is extracting text, what is the true purpose of extracting, the extracted mindset. This is key. Again, this is an article, this is a section with soft skills based. I can tell you the hard stuff is all text to extract. Done. Everything else, it's about the skill set. And the mentality and mindset is what will require most of the effort from your part. Understand of value based on helping hundreds of people that is not nowhere else in the documentation and so on. I'm not telling how it is done in this case. It's all of the things in human brain in order to understand that. How it's done, it's covered in a minute. Then the decisions about an extract, the metamemory judgment. So like a mental checklist that you need to check. If one of the boxes is checked, okay, I will do the extract, more or less. If it's important, makes sense, it's shortest, it's focused on a single idea, Then the results in the long term. If you do this or you don't, where will be the difference? Then the mental scaffolding. Once again, soft skills based. And the practical. Then some analogy. Just in case, again, this is like a meta in the course. When it becomes super abstract, I do some analogies, albeit limited. So at least you can get some more concrete stuff, because this is preemptively. So I won't be able to understand this myself at day one either, because this requires using incremental reading for a while. Then granularity of extract. Low granularity, the pros and cons, high granularity, pros and cons, the double-edged sword to do sequential extracts, the perils of linearity, which goes in consonance. Then the fact that this is an art, so it's not, okay, there are a lot of methods and techniques, but at the end of the day, it's an art. So what works for me doesn't work for you, or not to the same degree, and so on. So you need to follow, you will need to discover your own style, like in art. Like, hey, this author, Picasso, has this style. Perhaps you don't like it, his style, but he discovered his own style. It's an art. That, hey, you can discover your own style in incremental reading, how to use it. Different than mine. Then more soft skills, the information value, the coherence, conciseness, the topic focus, because you can do an extract, or it makes sense now, but later you will see it on its own, and then is it coherent, it is concise, and so on. Then we'll follow how very high level, how topics are scheduled. It's not the same as items. Then we will see use cases, skimming for value, reading with thought, read later. So some archetypes of extracting, only 3. In the mastery, each archetype has like schools, let's say. So it's even further divided. And there are more archetypes or sub-archetypes that repeats, but it's more in detail, and this only makes sense in the long term, not at the beginning. But just to let you know that this is further developed later on. Then we'll see the cons, all of the cons of skimming for value, the cons and pros of each one of those. Some of them are just one chapter that boom, gone, and the others, they have multiple chapters because they're more qualitatively different from each other, or they just take longer. Then we will see the granular extraction or the nested extraction, meaning I do an extract, and from this extract, I do a further extract, or I do a tiny extract every single time. When signals to stop presenting an article, this goes in consonance of before. When I'm done with an article, so this is when I'm done with the repetition. When the repetition of reading stops. Then other features extracts, that is not to create the extract, is to schedule the extract, the cons, and so on. Another analogy, the Russian doll, the Matroshka. Some practical workflow. In this case, I overrule the principle that usually in the Fluency, we mention the stuff, but we don't have a practical use case because the course, instead of 50 hours, will be 200 hours long. In this case, I have a practical workflow because it's easier to, okay, I know what you mean. Even if it's dummy, okay, I know what you mean. It's more concrete. A word of caution, then why bother the benefits of nesting? Because they are pros, but they're not easy to appreciate those pros unless you do it yourself. And then the cons. Everything goes with cons. And then an article from Wikipedia. So it sounds like a lot, right? That's because in the incremental reading loop, I focus on soft skills. Most of the values there. So without further ado, let's start with the section. So now we're going to introduce the extracting text in incremental reading. Not just extracting text, because spoiler alert, you can extract something else that is not text, like images or audio or video. So we're going to focus on an incremental reading loop just on text. So let's start. What is extracting? Extracting is a simple fact of selecting a fragment of text, like I'm doing now, from a larger article, an entire website, blog post, document, whatever, and chunking it down. Then you can think of it as a highlighter. We will introduce now the extracts as highlights. So more or less, we use what you're familiar with. But in the upcoming videos, I'm going to say the opposite. It's not the same. But let's take it incrementally. Instead of just changing the color, like a highlight, you're physically lifting the highlighted sentence or a paragraph out of the page to look at it on its own. So imagine if you were in the physical medium, with scissors, and you take out that sentence or paragraph from the book. It will be like this. Why? Because it exists on its own. And by the way, strictly speaking, it's not this. You don't cut the source because you create a copy, by the way. You don't delete. So the physical example would be writing down instead. So quote from William James, "The art of wisdom is the art of knowing what to overlook." It's such a golden nugget. It's like the litote. You are negating the opposite. So if I know what to overlook, it's the same thing that I know how to get the things I want, because I'm neglecting the rest. Let's continue. Why extracting text? The primary goal of incremental reading is to digest large pieces of knowledge, right? Volumes of information into manageable and bite-sized pieces until it is atomic. Can be overwhelming, like 10 pages, an article, especially if it's scientific with a super dense, a lot of jargon and concepts together. 10 pages of this could be very daunting. So instead, you chunk this down, right? Focus attention, propagates memorization, that later will be converted into question and answer, and then basically enables incremental reading. So you process massive amounts of information over time without losing the important details. Then, how you do that? In the previous section, we have seen the imports. How you import? Well, only from the web. There are other ways to import. Once you have the material in SuperMemo, you start reading. Once you start reading, that this is the first time I see it in my collection, then you identify a sentence that is crucial, and then you select the text. Hey, I'm telling SuperMemo, I want to see this again. I'm making the highlight, right? But on its own. So in SuperMemo, it's Alt-X, once I have highlighted the text. Now you see this color means I have extracted. Here is the extract on its own priority, interval, due date, starting date, and so on. That is the source. That not necessarily is the parent. In this case, it's one of the children already, one of the slides. And this highlight color means that the next time I see this, because I'm not done, I will see this later on in a different day. I'll do more repetitions. I will see this color, and this color means it is extracted. The exact color can be customized. If you see it slightly different, no worries. It's because I have my own styling. So the fact is that the software, SuperMemo, schedules this new extract, that is a topic, smaller, for review later. Not later today, but in the future. And you leave the original article intact, in the sense that the only thing you do is change the color of this, and that's it. You are not deleting anything in the parent, in the source. So this is just an introduction of what it means to extract text in SuperMemo. And there will be quite a few videos, because it's very important, it's key. It's part of the loop. Remember, it's the second iteration. You first import, but when you are in the app, it's the first thing you do. Start reading, and then extracting. You really need to do this. So no worries if you see a lot of videos about extracting that are still theoretical. They have a lot of value. Some people paid for tutoring just for this. So what you have for free here is worth a lot, believe me. Let's dig further with extracts. So extracts are never the final product. The final product are items, the flashcards. So even though, strictly speaking, you have some topics in your collection, the topics will be empty, will be just folders, just describing what you did to get there, the context of the items, the extracts you did, how you crawled to information, how you process information, and so on, which will be different from every person, right? And that's about it. So topics, the reading material, the articles, it's something temporary. Then, the topics that are extracts, so not the source, they are temporary markers for information you want to revisit for deeper reading, or to break down into permanent memorizable items later. This later can be the years. That means that I'm telling SuperMemo, like I do now an extract, I just did, hey, SuperMemo, I'm letting you know that here in this section of text, in this text selection, there is something I do care about, revisit later for deeper understanding, or that I already know that is something that I want to remember here. Not necessarily I know that. Depends on the complexity, difficulty, and stuff like this. It's just this. It's a tool. I will get there. I will revisit this later because now it's encapsulated in a new a standalone topic in my collection. This is an extract. This is the true purpose of extracts. Nothing else than that. Are always temporary because of this. So then, there are some common misconceptions. That, oh shoot, I thought that an extract was this, a highlight. Yeah, you can describe it as a highlight, but with a lot of nuisance added, just a highlight, that's not an extract in incremental reading. So let's see just a few common misconceptions, very high level. Creating an extract doesn't mean you have read or learned the content. It simply schedules it to be shown to you again. Usually, you will have read and then you extract. Not necessarily. There are some flows, like a splitting kind of thing, that you will create the extract without reading it. Something you will see quite often, by the way, in Piotr Wozniak's videos, doing this himself. Perhaps you have read this, but even if you have read, that doesn't imply you have understood it and learned it. Not necessarily. I'm getting there, right? So it just schedules this to be reviewed in the future. That's it. Then, another misconception. Avoid spending significant time on formatting extracts, as the source topics are temporary and will eventually be archived, or dismissed, or, in jargon, applied done. You delete the content. It stays in the knowledge tree as a folder, but there's the content. That I may spend some time, yes, to reformulate, to adapt the context, so the context stands itself, all of this. No worries, it's covered in other videos of this section. But this is just enough. I'm not going to make, oh, this is bold, this is underlined, this doesn't look pretty, the styling carry over, stuff like that. I'm not going to spend time with this because it's temporary. I'm only going to take time if it's my convention that, hey, this will be misleading, and my future self will think that this bolding means it's important or stuff like this. I don't know. Next, the goal is never to create extracts. The goal is to learn. Extracts are just one of the many tools or iterations in the method. So extracts can be phrased as merely a byproduct of finding valuable information that will be encapsulated in flashcards items. It's more or less a rephrase of what we said before, but it's so important that it's this. The goal is too massive. So now you know. What is an extract in incremental reading perspective? This. Temporary markers of information you want to revisit for deeper reading or breaking down into items later. As easy as that. Now you know the real purpose of extracts. Very important to keep this in mind. Let's cover the extractor's mindset. It's a very short video, it's just this slide, it's all about it, but it's not about it's not about its duration, it's about the value of this. So you know that in incremental reading you can extract. But it's not about reading more, it's about getting more of what you read. The purpose of incremental reading is this. As a consequence, you will read more. Yes, because it's more efficient in time, but it's not the goal. It's getting more of what you have been reading. Then adopting this method, this philosophy of how you read, you're no longer a passive consumer of information. Even though the sole fact of reading is passive, you don't just read. You are thinking, you will realize on upcoming videos, you will ask questions to yourself. This is no longer passive. You become an active hunter, constantly scanning scanning the terrain for valuable knowledge to capture, isolate, and integrate in your memory. That's why on this flow, one step of this flow is extracting. And you need this mindset that you extract as a tool to get somewhere. You're not just collecting information. This is not personal knowledge management, it's a learning app. This is the first and most important step into building a deep, lasting, and well-organized knowledge base, because extracts could have more extras, if you will, then the items, flashcards, reformulate those flashcards, and all of that. There's more in the loop. But usually the incremental reading loop, after you have imported the stuff, you start reading. It's the extractor mindset. It's very important you understand this. It's not about reading more. It's about getting more value of what you read. Then I used AI to check the meta learning from different authors. So most of this, but not everything, it's taken from that. Then your decisions about the extract are all metamemory judgment. The incremental extract processing, IAP, helps you make better ones by giving you time and perspective, because this interruption is actually good because it gives you time to gather more knowledge, and make a better judgment each time. The iteration is a feature. So we have different judgments. The ease of learning. That is judgments on how to be studied how easy to be studied items will be to learn. If I now do, I don't know, quantum mechanics, I will struggle more than if I do, I don't know, social psychology, let's say. Because of the mathematics involved, the more abstract thinking, and all of this. So the action in incremental reading will decide how many flashcards I make. I will do more flashcards because there's more hierarchy of knowledge that I need to do. I cannot, even though I can still do delay, I have some sequence to go through. Then, delay the judgment of learning. Judgments on the likelihood of remembering recently studied items. This will affect in incremental reading how you grade an item during a review. And I do this unconsciously. If it's language and stuff like this, I'm more lenient. Because it's a pattern, I may have some redundancy, I have more flashcards with that expression used in a different way, stuff like this, right? But if it's something more fundamental, and it's a principle in mathematics or in physics, And then this is a good example for me are Korean names. I'm learning Korean, okay? But especially the names, because they have usually names and surnames of one single syllable. For instance, Jimin, the name is Ji, 2 letters, and the surname Min, and then the entire name is 3. Usually just 3 2 names and a surname, and it's extremely hard for me to remember them. I don't know why. Perhaps I'm used that in my native language the names usually don't mean anything, or they mean something, but in other languages that for me it's not obvious that means something. But since they reuse the same sound, at least how they spell it, for something in the language, it's a lot harder for me to remember names. It's like if your name is Red Mountain, or peeled potato, or sweet potato, something like that. This exists in the language, makes it harder. So for me, the Korean names, I have the judgment, the likelihood of remembering these items recently will be lower. It's a meta-cognitive skill. Then, feeling of knowing. Judgments of the likelihood of recognizing current and recallable answers. That's the thing, that this flashcard appears. Oh yeah, I remember I created this flashcard, or that I have seen this flashcard and I lapsed it several times already. I recognize this flashcard at the same time that I cannot recall the answer. So you will take actions like summarize, do it later, dismiss it, do some redundancy, so you have the same item in different perspectives, stuff like that. Then selection of kind of processing. Selection of strategies to employ when attempting to commit an item into memory. So in incremental reading will be the core choice. Dismiss it, rephrase it, convert it into a flashcard, stuff like that. And finally, the termination of a study. You decide to stop an item is currently studied. In other words, you decide that that's the end of life. This flashcard is not useful anymore for me. Therefore, I will dismiss it or even delete it. So let's cover the mental checklist for selecting an extract. So before you select the text and you click Alt-X to make an extract in SuperMemo, have this mental checklist. Is this worth having an extract, creating an extract? So the mental checklist is inspired by the principles of SuperMemo and the framework, the quality of learning material, and so on, because you can be very extract easy and have a lot of garbage in your collection and accumulate this in the long term. It is not a good practice. So let's see how can we get it. So ask yourself, is this new and is it important for me? Because can be new, but I don't care. Or I can care, but there's nothing new. I already know that. Keep in mind, SuperMemo, it's a learning app. So I'm making an extract of something I already know. Could be the case that is how it's phrased. In a language level, it's new. And that will be my purpose. So, very high level. You're about to invest your time, and your time is very valuable. It's limited. So you want to only create the extracts that will be meaningful. Filters for value. You minimize the noise. Not information is created equal, and the information that is there for you is not equal everything, right? That's why the choice really matters. Then the novelty check. Remember the novelty bias. You will be a victim of it anyways. It's something that it's new to you. It's a rehash that has been a while, or a different perspective of what you already know. Or you just want some redundancy to verify, yeah, that's what I got from a different source. And then goal-oriented learning. Does this knowledge contribute to my objectives? If it's an exam, new skill, personal growth, something about your curiosity, it can be anything. The point is that, let's say that they have a personal goal to learn Korean language. And now, recent news is that ChatGPT 5 has been released. Okay, reading about this will contribute to my goal? I don't know, not directly. But perhaps reading about this, I will have some strategy, some new skill that I will be able to apply, among other things, to language learning in this case. So you never know. It's very broad. So quote, the art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. What to never see again. Sayonara, baby. Then, does this sentence make sense by itself? This is another perspective of an extract, especially if it's kind of small, like a sentence, even a phrase, or a paragraph. Does this stand alone by itself out of context? An extract should be self-contained, unit of meaning. If it's not, then you need to rephrase it and then extract it. It's very common that people just extract, I will see this again, and when they see this again is, oh shoot, I don't get, I need context, right? So first, filters for coherence. A good extract doesn't require extensive context to be understood. That also, to some degree, depends on the domain. Some domains are very factual, and just that sentence is more than enough. Then, if you need surrounding paragraphs to grasp the meaning, it's not a good extract. And again, sometimes I do this because it's very soft. It's like an idea, an abstract idea you want to convey in an article. It's less incrementally friendly. But that doesn't mean it's worse. It's just the nature of what you do. That's why you have to think this in perspective. If it's, imagine this in Wikipedia about biology or chemistry. Each sentence is almost a standalone every time. And here you go, the standalone meaning. Imagine entering the sentence weeks or months later. This is very, very true. I get it. I'm pretty sure I will get it. It's been 2 months, you have forgotten the details, you have seen similar stuff in between. Bro, what is this? I need context. Therefore, this to be rephrased or expanded. Now you can even do it with AI. And then you do the extract. And the eureka or aha moment. The coherent extract should provide a clear and immediate understanding of the fact or concepts it represents. Some exceptions do apply, but most of the time, itself is, it's a new insight, a new expression in language, a new link of concepts I already knew, but they are linked, and I was not aware of this relationship, stuff like this. All of those are extracts, worth both being an extracts. Then, what is the shortest possible way to state the idea? So our focus is efficiency, right? We don't want an essay, that every abstract is an essay, right? And another component is that we are not writing for being read as a writing comprehension. We are writing in a way that will read the flashcards for active recall. It's a different way to write stuff, by the way. Because the flashcard, at the end of the day, is just information to have this opportunity to travel, do the network, travel the synapses, and and strengthen the memory. Nothing else than that. So we want conciseness. So they're just the right words in the right grammar that very succinctly, very with the words per meaning ratio is very high. And whatever's not necessary, it's gone. Next, simplicity is key. So you don't have to be over the top, even if you have vocabulary. That will be more precise. In some cases, this preciseness is fictional. You will need more context to make this nuisance. And then this nuisance is lost in just one sentence, sometimes. So it's just unnecessary. Then analogy, something that is good. And the more you use incremental reading, the most you will rely on that, even if you're not aware of, are analogies. And you can have an item by itself about that, so no time is wasted. It's not that, hey, I have the description of the concept, the analogy. No. One item will be just the analogy. Boom. The other one will be just to recall the name of the concept. Boom. That's it. Atomic. So the most valuable of all talents is that of never using two words when one will do. This is awesome. And it's a pity I use English in my case, and I didn't achieve the same level of my native languages to be that succinct in English, describing stuff. Then, it is focused on a single core fact? Not necessarily. Remember that you do an extract, and this extract can be motivated for one reason, but could be long enough or dense enough that there will be multiple consecutive extracts, extract of an extract, or multiple close relations. Because the ultimate goal is atomicity. The flashcards need to be as atomic as possible. So each extract should represent a single visible piece of information. That is, yes, is in the best case scenario, in the ideal case, but we will see that this is flexible in incremental reading, and I can do something more lenient, more relaxed, and do a close relation before reaching this. This is what I call an extract that is one repetition away from close relation, meaning that has been reduced that it only needs one close relation, and you will apply it on. Sometimes you don't, even if you could, you don't, because it's not high priority enough. And you do the more lazy or relaxed way. Regardless of that, you will achieve the same thing. As long as you do it right, you'll have multiple flashcards within the same extract. So you will have the knowledge tree will be less incremental, but yeah, it's more or less the end point will be the same. One idea, one question. Well, one question and answer pair. This principle aligns with the practice of creating flashcards. And with flashcards ask about one and one only thing. If you want to, I actually want, I know, Schwarzenegger. Who was the Schwarzenegger? Yeah, but for me, I struggle. And I need another flashcard just to remember the actual spelling of his name, for instance. I actually have generated this flashcard. And the power of isolation. Individual facts, you make them easier to test, review, and strengthen in your memory. And since you will do this in different times, you minimize the memory interference. It's a win-win. It's a win as a side effect, let's call it like that. So to wrap up, by consistently applying the 4-question checklist, there are only 4 questions, it is focused on a single fact, it is the shortest possible way to state the idea, does this sentence make sense by itself, there's enough context, and is this new and important for me? Only those 4 questions. If one is checked, you can do the extract. Some exceptions to apply. I sound like a lawyer already. Oh my god. Then, you transform the process of selecting learning material from a passive reading, from a passive from a passive act, for your brain it's passive, highlighting and all of this, to a deliberate and strategic practice, which is active recall. But not only that, before you reach the active recall with the flashcard, making, transforming, and chunking down the information, processing this with your information that you already know, and creating the flashcard, this cognitive process is the learning. It's part of the learning process. If you do AI, boom, generate the flashcards for me, won't be the same. Then, which is another topic, because then you can still read them, accept them, and so on. So then it's like an autopilot, but yeah, it's a point from a different video. The result is a collection of high quality, easily digestible knowledge chunks that will significantly accelerate your learning and retention. Easy to say, but this won't happen overnight. And if it happens overnight because now you use AI, which is even better than humans, you will have the side effect that you don't create your own flashcards anyways. So you don't reach the victory overnight, but it's massive. So remember, you have more or less the heuristic, 4 questions. It is worth an extract. If you don't check any box, you can just pass. And you will see it later on. Depending on the priority, this could be never, or 2 years later. That is more or less the mental checklist for making an extract. So we're going to see why the mental model, the mental scaffolding, is a cognitive superpower. Remember that the mental scaffolding is something inside our reading GPS, the metacognitive framework. Remember that we can say we have 2 modes, the scuba diver, in-depth, or the helicopter driver, skimming and scanning. Okay. Then, in the case of making the scaffolding first, so first, even if I want to go in-depth, I want to go on a scuba dive, it's no, wait. First, I will get treat with a helicopter, get the insights of the territory, and then, once I know that, I will go in a deep dive, right? Awesome. So this has profound benefits for learning, and more especially in the long term. First is that it anchors knowledge and prevents floating facts that are in a limbo. That, okay, I have this fact, but I cannot put it connected with something I already know. It becomes isolated. This becomes asemantic learning, and it's something you want to avoid at all costs. We could say that the scaffolding hooks those in a structure that they can hang new facts, right? If we'll follow always the same example. Let's say it's memory, the Wikipedia article of memory. I was surprised to see plants. Wait, plants have memory? I always thought it will be animals in particular, right? Plants lack a specialized organ devoted to memory retention. Okay, they don't have this, as I thought. Has been controversial, but new advances in the field have identified presence of neurotransmitters in plants. Oh, so there's some stuff here, right? Even though it's minimum. Then in this case, what will happen? I will have a fact in isolation that the production of jasmonic acid stimulates electrical, therefore, what is all of that, right? So I could make a flashcards out of that, have this fact, but I cannot link it to something I know, because what is jasmonic acid? What is to hydrolyze? Because I'm not familiar with plant physiology, right? Therefore, if I do it, it will come floating. Another example, outside of the memory, will be the treaty was signed in 1915. Your brain don't just hear the date, it knows to hang the fact from the conclusion of the Napoleonic Wars, beam of your scaffold, being the next to the Battle of Waterloo, hook, So, even though you only have a very succinct fact like this connects to something you already know. Next, scaffolding creates a network of meaningful relationships, which basically it's what we just said, It's because it's the existence of this. I can hang on something, and when I hang or connect with something I already know, I'm creating a network as a consequence. It's just not a collection of hooks. It defines the relationships between them. For instance, as I'm reading, this paragraph is an evidence for the heading above it. Or this section is the counter-argument of the previous section. Or the conclusion is a direct consequence of the data presented earlier. So when I'm reading, the same. Plants lack specialized organs devoted to memory retention is controversial. So all of this now is just justifying why it's controversial. Or why now there's something new that before it was not possible to know. In addition to those homologous features of memory, So this will shape how you read, and as a part of this, how you extract. Do I care about the evidence? I just want to know that. Let's say I have faith. I don't want to know the evidence. Or it's not worth my time. According to the GPS, will tell me, I only have 5 minutes. So I trust it. So I'm not going to spend time for the evidence, right? Or no. It's a big deal. Let's say I'm a meat eater or a vegan, and I want to know this study, why the evidence says that the vegans are healthier. No, I want the evidence hardcore. Even more than the actual reading. The actual facts, I want more the evidence than anything else, to make one outlier case. Scaffolding builds robust retrieval pathways. Why? Because you can navigate the network. You have a rich interconnected map. For instance, I need to remember the arguments for that economy policy. Article 2006-45, I'm making this up. That will be tough. But I remember that the article structure was problem, history, proposed policy, arguments for, arguments against. Let me focus on the arguments for. Like I'm doing now. I'm telling you the pros of the mental scaffolding, right? So this already creates some meaningful relationship. Sorry, it's the other one. So if we go again, that I remember that I started with this article, but now I know that the plants have memory. They don't have the organ, but what do they have? Does that mean a brain? They don't have a brain? I don't know yet, right? But my end goal here is actually spaced repetition, and here you go, it's on my face. Spaced repetition, cramming, spacing effect. What is this? Improving. Okay, so perhaps I missed that with the helicopter, that I didn't notice the improving here. What I could have done is Ctrl F, spaced repetition, the keywords, and here you go, it's there. So now, even if I don't memorize that, of course I'm not going to memorize that, I can make a link, because now I associate memory with plants. Plants and memory, there was no link for me there. Now I can make this link and walk it. Next one is free up working memory for deeper comprehension. It's like in a computer, you have the RAM, random access memory. It's limited. Well, now you can have up to 6. For instance, I bought a new computer and I have 64 gigs, which is a slight overkill, but it's still limited. I have more storage in the hard disk than in the RAM. So therefore, my working memory, if it's lifted or some other stuff, better for me, because that means I can use it for something else. A good example, if you have the scaffolding, the big picture will be easier, therefore you won't saturate the working memory. And you can go much deeper. Then, let's do the same example as always. I am very familiar with the space repetition and so on. Okay, so memorization is a method of learning that allows the individual to recall information verbatim. I know verbatim means that's how it is, without any change. Rote means by force, just pure repetition, is the least efficient. More things have been subject of much discussion over the years for writers. I know the spacing effect already. I know what is cramming. Bit of time, spacing is exploited. Flash. I know what is a flashcard is. And what is this effect? It happens that occurs when activity that is being interrupted may be more readily recalled. Okay, I knew that. I just didn't know the name for that. But you know that it's easier for me. My working memory is not saturated because everything is, most of that is familiar. Now, if I go here, in my case, it has been shown that the trap closure can be blocked using uncouplers. What is that? And inhibit voltage-gated channels. After a trap closure, what is granular production? What is jasmonic acid? What is hydrolysis? Digestion of prey. Okay, that I get. That, even if I take a look, consider a class of enzymes that commonly function as biochemical catalysts that use water to break a chemical bond. Okay. Jasmonic acid. Compound several plants, including jasmine, but what is about it? And glandular. It's an organ, an animal's body that produces and secretes substances, I can do it like this. I can make sense. I'm working to make the sense out of this sentence, but my working memory is on 100%. It's overloaded because there's a lot of new information that I need this information to make the connections. That, oh, this and that, therefore that makes sense. But if I'm versed in this, and all of this is already very well stored in my memory, and easy to retrieve, which is not the same thing, it will be super easy. Therefore, I can pay more attention to what's new, like this, what especially about this plant in memory, and so on. One of the pros to have the scaffolding. Next is the practical outcome of scaffolding. That is a very, very good summary. Without the scaffolding, your learning is additive. You learn a fact, isolated facts, and you have a what? A pile of facts. Who won the Nobel Prize that year? What is the largest river in the world? Well, all of these random trivia are just pile of facts. And at the end of the day, you do nothing with them. Well, go to a TV show about trivia. That's the only thing you can do. And with the scaffolding, knowing the structure of what you're reading, your learning is integrative. You have fact plus a structure plus relationship, and you end up with knowledge. A pile of facts and knowledge, it's a massive difference. Like you don't even have to ask what's different about them. It will be the opposite question. What is similar between them? It's said that the society, especially in the academia, they measure the knowledge with this. So, hey, this guy is super wise and so on. It's not specifically. That guy just memorized a lot of random trivia, a pile of facts, but cannot make any reasoning of all of this, all of the super connected network. That now you know all of these facts about mathematics, physics, and so on, chemistry, solve this problem. They are not going to do it. It's no. Give me questions, and I provide you the answers of trivia. And a person who had an integrative approach with the scaffolding, even though they have read the same sources, they both have read the Wikipedia page about memory, that person will tell you, hey, let's say it's a disorder. Oh, this disorder of Alzheimer's happens this, happens that because of that. If you use a special petition with this, or what will happen in infancy if you use a special petition, all of that, and so on. And the other is, I don't know, just give me a question that is there and I will give you the answer. A pile of facts. This is a massive difference. Most of the YouTube videos in YouTube will be about this. The ones that get a lot of hits, a lot of views. Why? Because in exams, you need this. A pile of facts, and that's it. While learning, true learning is this. And I don't get almost views. So that's why the initial triage and the Skim review, the helicopter driver is not optional or is not a trivial step. Even though you really want, you know from day one, I want to deep dive on that, I will still skim it to see what's the value to maximize my time and all of the pros we have seen. That is all you need to know. That is all about the mental scaffolding and why this can be considered a superpower, especially in the long term, especially used within incremental reading, as we will see later. Reading later extract, skimming for value, or also when reading the helicopter, and reading with thought, or the scuba diver. So now we're going into the direction of extracting, not just reading, more in the territory of SuperMemo. Okay, so we've seen this in the Minecraft. Let's say that in Minecraft we want to do an expedition for gathering resources. Okay, what we're going to do? We're going to skim for value in a sprint of a vast case. It's a vast cave, it will take ages to explore all of that. But we are not stopping to mine every block of coal, copper, and so on that is available. Not because it's available, I want that. Instead, we're rapidly placing torches to light the way, quickly scanning the walls. If there's some valuable ore, hey, there's a vein of diamonds, iron here and there, and so on. This produces a chunk of extracts, coordinates of the iron vein. Hey, it's there. There's the diamond as well. Perhaps I don't have the tool now, right? And I have structural extracts, the mental map of the main cave, the tunnels and all of that. Not every single detail, but most of the main picture. You are not going to dig deep yet. You're just mapping the potential. You are still in the helicopter mode. Nice. Then, standing on the mountain at the start of the new world, you see a jungle biome, a desert temple in a distant village, and so on. Here's the village, right? You can explore them all at once, so you prioritize. What I will do first, according to my needs, will be the village, then getting materials, and then I will go to the jungle because the survival is tougher. So I will put for later the jungle, and I will go and skim then inside the cave. Nice. Once I have done that, then I will read with thought. Once I return to my promising spot, I found that that were the coordinates. You will put your best enchant pickaxe, the best items you have in your inventory. In SuperMemo will be putting the best effort and time on that. Then methodically you clear the area of the veins, you get more or less the value from it. Then it's lava, creepers, and so on. You already produced atomic extracts from diamonds, that will be gold ingots, after melting, and so on. And your personal insights. Unexpectedly breaking through a wall, you discover something, a mine shaft with chests, something you didn't know it was there. So you got the value from that, and then you don't continue visiting the cave, even though there are some details here and there, because you get most of the value. Then you will keep skimming. Hey, there's a new room. Is there something of interest? You will skim for value there. Only putting on iteration of the sim. Lightening the path, let's see if there are enemies, it's worth my time, I'm ready for it, and so on. And once you're done with this, we're going to the same place. Am I ready now to go to the temple? I am ready to go to the jungle with the items I have now. So more or less, this is an analogy of extracting. I have different, instead of biomes or places like the jungle and the temple, could be I have the Wikipedia page about memory, I have the SuperMemo wiki, I have this book, this other article or blog post. Let's do the same. Let me skim for value, read for later this and that. It's too dangerous now to do it, to adventure. And where's the value after skimming? It's here and there. Let me revisit that and get the value from it. Hope it makes sense. Let's continue with the extracts of incremental reading. And now with the focus on the granularity, right? We have seen that the ideal case is that it's just one repetition away from the close deletion. The extract is already atomic. That's one of the maximum granularity, but it's in a spectrum. So we will see different sides of this spectrum of granularity, the pros and the cons. because incremental reading is flexible and doesn't mean you always have to optimize to the best ideal scenario. That's the beauty of it. You can mix different levels depending on the priorities, how important it is, how bored you're that day, and so on. So the most important stuff is that you can make this strategic choice. You know the pros, the cons, therefore I do this, I do that. Think of it as the difference between taking a picture, a photograph of the entire tree, versus taking a high-resolution photo of a single leaf. Both are useful, but for different purposes. Let's start. The spectrum of granularity. Granularity isn't simple choice between two options. It's in a spectrum, just to make it clear. So there's one end that will be like nothing at all, the entire document, and I do the flashcard right away without an extracting. Or I do the extract of an extract 3 levels, 4 levels, until I get just one atomic piece of information and I do the closellation. If you ask me, I try to check, there's no way I can search for that in SuperMemo, but at least the maximum I remember, it is 14 levels. Meaning, for the source, that was a textbook, I nested 14 times until I didn't get the flashcard. Because it was a big chunk of a section, then a chapter, section of the chapter, the paragraph, so it was very chunked down. But this is an outlier case, just to make the point that you go to different places in the granularity, in the spectrum. And then, imagine like the Turing test. Remember that the Turing test is to ask questions to know if the entity you're speaking to is human or not. So imagine you have this article about Alan Turing. And the Alan Turing test, originally called Imitation Game by Alan Turing, in the 1950s, is a test of machine ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. I have this extract. Where do you place this extract in the spectrum? To the very granular or to the very low granular? You might be surprised that it's not that granular. It's not that atomic. There's quite a lot here. I could do very easily 3 or 4 extracts here to increase the granularity. But we will get this example so you see different cases. Every time will be the same, by the way. So I have here the same text, and I do one closellation. Which kind of behavior, right? Remember, now the point is not it's just intelligent. The point is not the precise word I make the closellation, is the effect of granularity. Now I have a flashcard, and what happens? That I have the date, also known as there's a lot of information that is not required for this question. It's not atomic, right? Then this low granularity coarse extract is still a good choice if I don't care who, I don't care the other name, I don't care about the date. Then what I'm going to do, now if I let me do the closellation. I didn't do it, that's a pity. In this case, yeah, Turing test, alternate definition game by, okay, I don't care about this. Is a test machine ability to exhibit what? What kind of behavior? Oh, intelligent. And I could still later on make this even shorter. Okay. But if I do care about the year or who, in this case it's very easy because it's right after his name. So you get what I mean. Then you could do, no, I will just do the year here, pam, and the original name, invitation game. So I will need to adapt every time the flashcard because it contains more information. Or if it was high granularity, that we will see later, I will do the extract first. In this case, I will do 3 extracts, and each extract, well, sub-extract, because this already is an extract, the sentence, each one of those will have one closellation. That's why it's not one better than the other. Depends on your goal, how you care, your priorities, what you already know, and stuff like that. But before going to the other granularity, let's see the pros and cons. The pros of low granularity: faster topic processing, because you have seen that already in one go. I process the entire sentence. Close deletion, close deletion, close deletion. This is already scheduled. The close deletions are scheduled. I will do this in parallel. I don't need any reading in parallel if I did 3 different extracts. What else? Preserve the context. Exactly. Since I have more information than I need because it's not atomic, as a consequence, could be seen as something positive that I have more context. So when I see this in the flashcard form, I ask about the year. A year of what? Oh, the Turing test or the original name? Because that means, I actually don't know, I will need to double check that, but let's pretend that he already made that, or he was developing this test, but he coined the name in the 50, but later on changed the name. So then this year is particularly not of the year of the test, is the name of the test. Later on it was called Alan Turing. When was called Alan Turing test? It will be a different year, right? So I have enough context for that. Nice. And it's less upfront effort. It's actually more effortful in the long term, by the way. So you pay less upfront, but later on, since you need to reformulate more heavily every flashcard you do low effort, it will come back with interest, with tax. So it's low effort upfront, but worse in the long run. The cons: harder to memorize, because the item is complex. You will need some iteration to get rid of the details or the more information, because you don't have that. The minimum information principle. So in this case, I already did it, but could be that equivalent to, comma, indistinguishable from, I said the best phrasing, and the answer is intelligent. I thought it was, perhaps what I want is what is the test that distinguish human from bot, right? If you cannot distinguish them, means is indistinguishable, meaning they succeed, they pass the Turing test. The machine, the human, cannot tell if it's talking to another human or a machine. Then, to understand this better, we will need more examples, but we will see this on genuine examples with videos that will be super long in the multi-hours. This is just a theory. Then the con is that it lacks flexible knowledge. It's less isolated. First, they are siblings. That will have some consequences already, that we will see later in the course or in the mastery course. And you do this on the same repetition. This one is 1 day. 1 day, wow, it's worst case scenario. I created 3 flashcards and all of them are scheduled for tomorrow. What's going to happen? On top of that, the priorities are very similar. I didn't change them. They have inherited from the source, which was 0%, 0 point something, very high. That means that I will see these almost next to each other, guaranteed. Until I undo some repetitions, that then the intervals with the fuzziness, even if it's 1% or 5% difference, this means 4 days or a week difference. Until I don't reach that point, it's a downside. You will perform better short term because one is giving away is a refreshment of the other. Yes, you will have a high recall. And then after a while, it will be worse because you are just kind of cheating. Then let's see the high granularity of the same text. Basically, I already did the flashcards for convenience because it will be the same as sentence. But look at that. What is the modern name of the test Alan Turing originally called the repetition game? Turing test. That is a different perspective that I didn't got before. Because what he got originally called Imitation Game by Alan Turing, but by who already tells me the precise name, and the date is actually using the passive voice. I think it's not the best. It's not, at least for me, it's not the best. What is the modern name for the test of Alan Turing? Boom. Which year did Alan Turing propose the imitation game? Ahaha. That's the key factor that I said before. One thing is that I propose the name, I propose whatever it is, a concept, a formula, a design, a tool, or an invention, and the other is the coining of that term. For instance, Pilates, in case you're not familiar, is named after his inventor, Joseph Pilates. But he didn't call it like that. He called it contrology. So when you ask the question, when it was invented or developed, is 1 year, and when it was actually called Pilates, it's a different year. Same here. And then the Turing test is the test of machine ability to exhibit what kind of behavior? Intelligent behavior. Compare this question, extremely to the point and atomic, to the one I got. Imitation game. Here. Oh, and with a typo, sorry. The Turing test is a test machine's ability to exhibit blank, intelligent. Do you see that? Yeah, I can still make the repetition. Perhaps I will still succeed, but if I do a ton of flashcards every day, it will put a lot more stress on me. It will be harder to remember it like this. That's why what we said at the start of this video and some other videos in this section is that we're not writing for just tweeting or making a blog post. We are actually making triggers, memory triggers for ourselves in the future. So how you actually phrase it is very impactful. Expressed like this is more upfront cost, but it's a lot easier. Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's not that, oh, let me decipher, yeah, that's the name, that's the alternative name, that's the year of the invention or of the coining of the term, it's more work. So let's go directly to the pros. Easier to memorize. Straight to the point. The cognitive load is to the minimum. It's unambiguous, direct, and simple. And the language is perhaps precise. That could mean you use some of the low-frequency words or expression, but doesn't mean you use them unnecessarily, that you can replace one of high frequency and it will make the same sentence. There's no nuisance that you are sacrificing. It doesn't have to be complex just because of being complex. Then it's flexible and robust knowledge. You build 4 fundamental blocks. The more atomic it is, the more you can nest, right? So in this case, it's quite easy because it's just one test, behavior, I know what it is, to be distinguished and distinguishable, I know what it is. But some cases is, if it's, I don't know, nutrition, and I add a lot of chemical names, is, oh yeah, so the protein, I know what it is, right? But folic acid, yeah, I heard of it, but I won't be able to know what are the functions, what are the effects in the body. That's beyond me, right? So I can be part of the sentence, but I will pay a price for that, right? But if I do incrementalism, it's, folic acid, let's cover that. Oh, no, boom, now this. What means to be indistinguishable? Let's say that I don't know this concept. Stuff like this. And later on, I do the entire thing. I cover the entire thing, perhaps with more flashcards, not necessarily, because some of the flashcards will have been covered elsewhere that I came across the indistinguishable in some other place, stuff like this. Incrementalism always wins. That's why it's always fundamental block. And it's so atomic that you cannot, you can lapse that because we're humans. But once it's on your face again, gotcha. And that's it. Perhaps the worst could be several times, for whatever reason. But everything makes all of the sense. It is very, very easy to hard code, to stick with you. And if you do the other one, like this, you will create a lot of flashcards. You will have a very good rhythm with incremental reading. You will start accumulating flashcards that you cannot review. And once you do, since are low effort, because remember, the cost is not up front, it's later on. You accumulate flashcards that you have to pay the tax later on the fourth or the third repetition. And compare with the high granularity that you pay most of the cost up front, so the tax or interest you pay is minimum. So if they build up, it's not the same. In the long term, it's a win-win. But they have some cons. It's a slower topic processing. Slower in the sense that take more topic repetitions. In the time of your life, it's the least consuming time approach. Because there's a lot of stuff you don't need to rephrase in the future. It's the stuff that you don't lapse. You don't have to repeat several times once again to get the year intervals. So even though you pay an upfront cost every time, the other half of the cost, it's the cheapest. There's nothing that beats this in the long term. Then, the upfront effort that will make that you don't do that many flashcards, and especially at the beginning, because you will do an extract of an extract, so you will need 3 or 4 repetitions more to just create the first flashcards. Unless the low granularity, that in the first repetition, perhaps you already create the flashcard. That doesn't mean it's good or it's bad. If it's low quality, if it's low priority, it is what deserves low effort because it's low priority, that item. It's like you are, you don't treat, it's politically incorrect, but imagine you are in the medieval ages. You don't treat a slave the same as a noble, right? Yes, they are human, they deserve to be treated the same. But no, you do the social, very distinct and strict social status difference, right? It will be the same with priorities. It's just information, not humans, so no worries. And the final con is the opposite. So most of the time it's the opposite of the other. We said before that since you do low granularity, you keep more information, more extracts, more context. Here is the opposite. That's why, if it's taken to the extreme, that I cannot reduce this anymore, it's already one flashcard, one close deletion away, you might forget something you did before. Some atomic facts in the same chapter or in the same section that is scheduled, you haven't done the repetition yet, and you don't know, but perhaps you will know in next week. That's why this requires more upfront effort, yes, but more expertise. Don't do this right away. I had done it like that, so I don't know why. I internalized incrementalism, very hard code, and have been very hard code for multiple years until I didn't start doing these exceptions of low granularity. So, yeah, I did 11 years of space repetition, but not of incremental reading before that. So that is a very, very, believe me, easy overview of just the opposites of granularity. We haven't seen the middleman or something in between, right? We only have seen low, very low, kind of low, and very high. In incremental reading, especially in the mastery track, we will offer some more options. But instead of pretending, hey, that will be the text, that is what I will do, it will be something genuine. Hey, it's an article I'm reading, and I will do it genuinely. Let's continue with the extracts in incremental reading. Now it's time for the consequences of sequential extracts. That means that you do extract, an extract, an extract in a sequence. It's very convenient, but it comes with a very quite nasty side effect. Well, multiple. So that more or less it's this philosophy in incremental reading. The cost you don't pay today, you will pay in the future with tax, with added value. It will be more costly. Okay. So we could simplify that in SuperMemo, what you don't, the cost you don't pay today, you will pay it in the future, but with a greater cost, with inflation. It will require more effort. So what's the double-edged sword of the order? The order of things is the first step towards mastery. That's a learning proverb. I don't know if it's from someone, but yeah, you may hear it slightly different, but it's the same point, right? Awesome. Also, we know that in incremental reading, you have to embrace the chaos. Actually, the non-linear thing, it's one of the premises of the method. It's non-linear. You break the linearity. You break the sequence. You break the order. So you have the initial clarity. Processing extracts in the order they appear in the article. So what appears first in the article to the bottom provides a clear and logical flow, especially when first encountering new and complex information. But that's not what you do. What you will do, at the very least, is getting the extracts at the order you did them. But if you read linearly, you will get there at the same point, at the same place. Another order is by priorities. So even if I go linearly, I assign different priorities. And this will, among other things, affect the first interval. So perhaps the first extract has 2 days interval, and the second has 1 day interval. So I will see before the second than the first, because of the higher priority is shown before the lower priority. So let's stop it here and let's continue. Contextual foundation. This sequential approach helps in building a foundational understanding by preserving the author's original structure and line of reasoning. That is the key. That is the golden nugget. There's no need for that. You don't need to follow the author's original structure. Some exceptions do apply. Like in this section, I will always say that. Some exceptions do apply. But most of the time, it's yours. So I don't care about the authors in this case. I can distill this and processing in a non-linear fashion. Like a very good example, it's Twitter. I can read the tweets in linear fashion by chronological order. But it's very incremental because they're very self-contained. I don't need context of what was said before. Well, some exceptions do apply because they have a thread, but you get what I mean. I could read tweets of the same person out of context, out of sequence. And third is the illusion of progress. Moving through a text sequentially can create a satisfying sense of completeness, much like reading a book chapter by chapter. You may have seen some apps that kind of, let's say, want to implement incremental reading, or don't, and they tell you the percentage. Hey, you are 20% done. You are 50% done. How do you know that? You can only know that if you are reading linearly. There's no other way. Then directly, you could track how much the user has seen about a text, right? It gives you an illusion of progress. 50% done of the text doesn't mean 50% done of the content, of what I'm learning from it. So it doesn't tell me absolutely much. It's quite irrelevant, this metric. Then, the perils of linearity, the dangers. Straight line is a shorter distance between 2 points, which is actually true mathematically, it's true. But not always the most interesting and effective path to knowledge is in a straight line. Usually the opposite is true. Then, the loss of the big picture, or the non-creation of the big picture. Because to lose the big picture implies you had the big picture, after a while you lost it. But sometimes you don't even create the big picture to begin with, which is not the same thing. It's even worse. So focusing strictly on sequential extracts can lead to a narrow tunnel vision of understanding the material. So is that, okay, so let me go back. We have a source. Imagine this, what I'm using as what I'm using in a slideshow. This is the entire section, the entire text I want to read, and I'm making these extracts, right? Okay. Even though I do linearly, the extracts I do are ordered in the order I did them, which will coincide with the order of appearance in the text if I do that on linearly. But later, everyone has its own. Look at this. 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, 3 and 2. Okay, there's no one with 1 day, but at least I have 2 different days. 2 different kind of intervals, 2 and 3. Oh, look at that, this is 1. Awesome. That means that from now on, I won't see them necessarily in the same order. I will see first the very first, coincides, then I will see the second on the second day, coincides, the third, nope, this is the same day, and the fourth in the third day, and the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth in the second day. So that means that even if I start that on linear, because of extracts, then you kind of lose this linearity at some degree. But you can make it, if you really want, to still keep this linear fashion. I know some people who want that, especially they come if they are processing textbooks. Why you use the tunnel vision? Why you use the big picture? Because of the narrow tunnel vision. It is like it seems counterintuitive, but it's not. Because why? Because you have interconnectedness of ideas. What you have read now will be linked of what you will read next, and what you will read next will be linked every time. The context is reused and all of this. That means that you're not macro interleaving, changing subjects. So you don't have this extraction of memory because every time is somewhat very similar. It's like during the process, it's easy, but long term, it will become complex. Because I always had this very heavy reference of text, of context, that I can predict what's coming next already. Oh, it's this the definition. Oh, it's this with this concept. Let's follow the example of nutrition. I read about vitamin 1. Okay, the next will be vitamin 2, vitamin 3, 6, B9, B12. Yeah, it makes it easy to process the article, but it will haunt me. It will go against me in the future. Because I had this interconnectedness of ideas. If you do this out of a schedule, then you do one chunk, something else, one chunk, something else, one chunk, that may seem, what is this stupid idea? This is incremental reading. It works wonders. In the long term, especially. Then, prioritization breakdown. Not information is equal, so therefore, since you do by sequence, it's a lot harder to distinguish. Hey, this is 2%. No, this is 2.5, 2.7. Yes, because I'm doing the same thing all the time. It becomes harder to make the difference, right? And then you have the slow slog effect. The progress can feel agonizingly slow, especially with the long or dense articles, and can be demotivating. Even though you progress faster, because you will need fewer repetitions, and you don't pay the cost up front, you will do it later, you have this sense that is very slow. The very good example is a movie. It's longer than usual, like an episode that can be 20 minutes or 40. It's 2 hours. Wow, it's a lot more dense, a lot more repetitions, but there's a sequence, and I'm reusing the context. Everything is interconnected. If I had seen that movie with chunks, it will be more memorable. I will remember stuff a lot better, even though the time I invested at the end of the day would have been the same, 2 hours, the duration of the movie. Next is the forgetting cures cruel joke. Memory is not a linear recording. It's a dynamic web of associations. So if you're consuming stuff linearly, You are a victim. You need to move on. You need to accept a paradigm that is nonlinear. Incremental reading, if you really stretch it inside the essence, yes, you can do linear fashion, linear reading, and call it incremental reading, because you will do the extract, the consolation, assign priorities, all of that. Yes, but it's a stretch, it's an outlier case. The full power of incrementalism relies on non-linearity. That doesn't mean that I create a deliberate delay as a feature, because I'm still reading linearly, just with breaks. Is when you start from different places. Second chapter, or like a Wikipedia page that is friendly for incremental reading most of the time. You read perhaps the first paragraph that is like an introduction and a description. And then you start history and you can do this non-linearly. If you do by linear fashion, you are a victim, among other things, of interference. Why? Because I have been exposed to the B vitamins altogether. What is the vitamin that the vegans need to supplement? Oh, it's B12. Okay. What vitamin is the pregnant women need to supplement? Is the B9, folic acid, that also has the name of B9, right? Okay. What is the one for fingers, fingernails and all of that? Oh, shoot. It's the same? It's B9 once again? Oh, shoot. What happens is that I have learned them in sequence. Then all of those are B vitamins. So they are very similar in my space, in the neural network, and are very new, are very fragile still. They have not been consolidated into long-term memory. That's why it's super easy to create the flashcards, to create the extracts, but it's not easy for me to maintain this in memory because of memory interference. If I do this out of sequence, I will minimize interference. Why? Because, B12 is already consolidated. I know this for sure already. Then is another B vitamin. Okay. Then there are 12. I know. I think B11 is not even used, I think. But you get my point. Weakness, weaken long-term retention. Same story as the extracts, the previous video. Because I do sequential extracts, and I create, or with one extract, I create 3 flashcards right away, it will be easier for me to recall them temporarily, because they are in sequence. If you remember, look at this. Intelligent 50 imitation game. So if I have this, I will have this extract, I have 3 flashcards scheduled the same day, it will be a lot easier for me to succeed in the recall of 2 or all of 3 than if I do this in isolation, right? Yes, because I'm cheating. It's because in the prior repetition, I had the same text and it was on my face. So I read 50 2 minutes ago. So of course now I can remember, because it's not the last time, it was 2 days ago. I had a reminder 2 minutes ago, right? That's why I will perform better, yes, but the cost of a weakened recall in the long term. Because long term, I will lose this sequence. It's like the people who can tell the alphabet by the index. What's the 12th letter in the alphabet? I don't know, because I never learned it that way, because I don't have this requirement in real life. So what I will do, A, B, C, D, until I go to the 12th, right? They need the sequence. Then for the alphabet, it's okay, because for me, I will need this when I have a riddle, a puzzle in a video game, stuff like this. I don't care. But for most of the stuff, you don't want the sequence. You don't want to be a victim of the sequence. That, what is the vitamin? 1, 2, 3, oh yeah, it's the third one. Puff. You need the sequence, because you memorize from a table, and if I ask you, what vitamin do vegans need to supplement, you memorized semantically, hey, it's the last in the list, so the last in the list is B12. Not because I know it's B12 already, it's because it's the last of the sequence, if you know what I mean. This is already weak, because you're relying on something contextual, not the real thing. Just to present one example. And the illusion of knowledge. You may feel like you know a topic because you have processed all of the extracts. I actually am guilty of that. Bro, I processed all of the article in incremental reading. I have created a flashcard for every single piece ever possible in that article. And for instance, in SuperMemo, I had thousands. And the big one, the Incremental Learning Manual, I had more than 3,000 flashcards from that source alone, right? And I had this, I feel like I really know. Then years later, I do that and oh shoot. And because they do appear now, because the intervals were long, more than a year, they appear and it's, what is this? I make very bad judgments because I memorized some stuff in the graphs that I never check. Oh, because it's not present, the legend, what means the red bar in this plot, or other stuff? What happened? I sacrificed the incrementalism because I did this preemptively. And then I paid the price that I created a lot of flashcards for stuff that is not required, is not useful to know. Because I am checking this once a year or less often, so why memorizing all of every single intricate detail, right? But even if I did, it's still an illusion. Because later I do the flashcards, and most of those flashcards, all flashcards for SuperMemo, I fail. The ones that I haven't been used, which color is this in the sleep chart? I don't know. I no longer use the sleep chart, right? So I will read about this for the course, before the course, so I refresh everything, but not for the long-term memory. After 5 years, why do I want to know all of that, right? So you have this illusion. So not because now in your fresh memory you can recall some of the extracts, some of the flashcards you created, means you know a lot. It's very robust. Usually it's the opposite. Because you have sacrificed a lot of incrementalism, what you know now, it will be very prone to forgetting because of interference. It is closer to mass practice. Then, practical advice for a SuperMemo user. Don't be a passive recipient of your learning queue. How many people, especially Yankee users, who try incremental reading, do this? Because they are used in Anki to just be a passive recipient of the do queue. Do the flashcards that are outstanding, that are due, pam, and drill that. Because you don't have control. Yes, you can make decks. You can make decks in the sense that contain big containers of priorities. This is a must. This is kind of in the middle. This is low priority. That can wait. Stuff like this, right? But are just big chunks. It's not a priority queue at all. And you have no control of the sequence and among other things. Not the point of this video. So, practical advice, mix it up. Mix different topics. Even if the topics, because you're a beginner, even if the topics are read linearly, since you do several at the same time, you will let some extracts to accumulate, and those extracts will kind of lose the linearity. That now I see the second before the first, I see the fourth before the second, stuff like this. You are still in the linear fashion. It's not a mixed approach. It's still prone to linearity, but it's some degree already that your brain can get used to. Then, extract can connect. When you make an extract, because you remember the video, principle of the delay, yes, and the mental checklist, right? That, hey, is this focus on single core fact? It makes sense by itself, it's important to me, and all of this. Then you create the extract, but from now on, this extract will be a topic on its own, with a standalone priority, interval, and stuff like this. So when this comes next, a new process as an extract form is something you have already read, perhaps something you have reshaped a little, depending on the context you had, right? So this is a new opportunity to link to something you have learned before, in the middle of those repetitions. That's why the interruption is a feature. And you can create new questions that bridge those conceptual gaps. Incrementalism is the best because you can see, because of the forgetting of details, the forgetting of what you didn't choose to remember, you will see the holes. It will be on your face. That if you do it preemptively, pam, 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 with the help of AI. Just to let you know that I made my point, and I created more than 5,000 flashcards up front just to prove this point. It's in my own collection. I do the repetitions, and then since I have these in different templates, I will be able to tell you that biased data might recall in each case something genuine. Okay, then trust the algorithm, but guide it. Yes, you need to trust the algorithm because it's closed, you don't know exactly how it's working, but allow SuperMemo space repetition to work its magic. But you need to put some ingredients there. You need to spend time formulating the flashcards. If you have crap, there's nothing else that you can do, right? If I only have very low quality ingredients, the dish I can do, it will be low quality, right? Prioritize the knowledge. And do not dictate the exact order of reviews via subset, that you modify the sequence and all of this. So by not doing this, so this is taking no action. Prioritizing, keeping the formulation on point, then it's just, the rest is just faith in the algorithm. Then, the incremental reading philosophy. The art of the learning is the art of prioritization. By Piotr Wozniak, the creator of SuperMemo, incremental reading, space repetition. Computational space repetition. There are 3 rules. Embrace the chaos. Why? Information is chaotic. The world is chaotic. You cannot solve that. The only thing you can do is to embrace it. Second, prioritize ruthlessly, systematically. Once you create, once you review, every single repetition you do for every single element is prone to be prioritized. This ensures that limited time and energy for most important information. It is a must. If you don't prioritize in incremental reading, you're prone to noise, to arbitrariness. And sooner or later, it will be the same experience as just browsing the web. And third, build a web of knowledge. Allowing more random and prioritized review, by the way, this randomized meaning non-linear, that you don't do by sequence, it's randomized. Randomized doesn't mean arbitrary, not the same thing. You begin to see the novel connections between seemingly disparate topics. That, hey, I started with nutrition, and then I see something that relates to biology. They kind of go in consonance, right? But then I do something that, hey, the behavior in dogs have this in common. Well, I do some insight that, boop, I will never, I didn't see that, right? I see now this connection. And this fosters a deeper and more creative understanding. It is a lot harder to forget that naturally. That's why it will be chaotic in the meantime, and this meantime can be long. But long term, you will have reached the same point, more robust, easier to recall, easier to remember facts, and the time invested long term will be the minimum, because you didn't pay what I call the initial low effort that comes with inflation. You don't have to pay that in inflation. To wrap up, by understanding these consequences, everything we have said so far, you can move beyond a simplistic linear approach to unlock the true power of incremental reading in SuperMemo, forbidding lasting and interconnected knowledge. Even if you don't link anything, so I don't link elements by elements explicitly, which is a feature that we are not going to see in detail in the Fluency track. And if it's just on your brain, oh yeah, this relates to something I have that, yeah, it will be somewhere in my knowledge tree, but I know it's there, right? So it's just on my brain that I do it. I don't take any action in particular in SuperMemo to link this. I mean, it's the true power. That's why the consequences of sequential extracts, now that you understand them, even though you will experience them, because I do suggest to start linearly and always do A/B testing, now you know what is the other side of the spectrum. But you don't know how powerful, how scarily powerful it is until you don't spend a few years. So let's see the case of the maximum granularity of extracting, and it's when you have an extract that is one repetition away from close deletion. Meaning that if this was an extract already, I'll just do one close deletion, boom, and that's about it. So let's see the characteristics it needs to have to accomplish that. First is the information value. It needs to be worth remembering, because then it's pointless. Even it could be the case that because you split or you extracted before in the past, you do your reps, and what pops up, it's an extract that is one repetition away, but it's noise, it's something that you don't care. It's not worth remembering. So even though it classifies as an extract, one repetition away from close deletion, that doesn't mean you have to do the close deletion necessarily. So don't waste your time with that, because it's trivial. For instance, one example. The Second World War was the global war that lasted from 1939 to 45. Okay, I already know that. It's just the year of starting and ending. Cool. And this one, Operation Fortitude, was the code name for the Allied deception operation during the 1944 Norman landings. But if I only see this in isolation, is this related to the Second World War? I only know it's during the time of the Second World War, but could be something unrelated to that. It just happened that year. But if it's something new, for me now this includes something new, specific, and it's important because of what I'm reading, then I will do a close deletion here. What was the code name? If I care about this, it will be this, the name. So the next domain for highlights to be the maximum quality, meaning one close deletion away from one close deletion away. Does it stand on its own? The one we have seen, this one already stands on its own, and so is this one. Then you have this, which was the primary reason to subsequent failure. This is useless. Could be which, the mentioned, he, she, it. I don't know what's the reference, the antecedent grammatically, so yeah. And the good will be exactly everything is complete. So you have the subject is clear and it's not ambiguous. A critical lack of supplies was the primary reason for subsequent failure of the expedition. What was affected? The expedition. What failed? The expedition. What was the reason? A lack of supplies. A critical lack of supplies. And it was the primary reason. This already implies there are more reasons. Here I only have which. I'm lacking, not intended, a critical lack of supplies. And basically this will be what I will make the close deletion. Because this extract is one close deletion away already. I don't need to delete the information and so on. Well, silly speaking, I will have only this extract without the slide, you know. But in case you're confused, just to double check that I will do this. This is what I will have, and then I will make the close deletion. So let's continue with the highest quality of extracts in SuperMemo that are one repetition away from close deletion. And the third dimension is conciseness. Is this as short as possible? And this is not the same as atomic, by the way. Usually people confuse atomicity with brevity. So the extract must be coherent, stands on its own, also be coherent, and capture the minimal fluff. You want just the core, the essence. only what is required, without losing its meaning. Here we have one example. An example that is pure, a poor example. Although many factors were considered, and despite the arguments were from the other committee members, it was ultimately the chairman's final vote that broke the deadlock, a decision that will be remembered for years to come. So perhaps this is originally in the source because of dramatic effects, or it's just the entire article is verbose, whatever. It's good, it's something you want to remember, but not how it is formulated, right? So you will reformulate this as the chairman's final vote broke the deadlock. Because you formulate this for your long-term memory. You want to revisit that memory. You don't want the prose. What broke the deadlock? The chairman's final vote. Then, here we're not going to discuss. Can you do it here already? So you reformulate on the extract before the close deletion? Or you first do the close deletion, and when it's in the flashed format, you reformulate. We will see this in the coming sections, not now. So let's cover the fourth and final dimension for the highest quantity of extracts you can do in SuperMemo, and it's when they are one repetition away from close deletion. And the fourth is the atomic focus. Does it contain just one idea? This is very often confused with conciseness. One thing is to make it as succinct as possible. You convey one idea with as few words as possible. And the other is that in one question you only have one idea, not many, which could also be brief and have three different ideas, which we will see in this example. Let's say, to simplify, that this is what will be the most high yield for you. The less Wikipedia-ish style of writing, the more kind of verbosity and, yeah, I'm now referring something that has been said before, it will need more rewriting. Here we have one example. The clavicle, or collarbone, connects the sternum to the scapula and is the most commonly fractured bone in the body. You will say, hey, it's not that wordy. And actually, it goes quite straight to the point, actually. That's what is the difference between conciseness and atomicity. It contains the facts, yes, but contains an alternative name, also known as, its connection, and the fracture rate. Perhaps what I want to know, the good extract will be, the clavicle is also known as the collarbone. That's a fact already. If I want atomicity, it's one thing already. Then, what it connects to, I will create another extract, or I will make the close deletion, and then reformulate the question so it's actually different. Depends on you. But here, for the purpose of this video, we're going to take for granted you do it on the before the extract. You do it on the extract level. Then you will say, hey, let me do another one. Let me rephrase it once again. Let me do it here on the spot, so it's more clear. Collarbone, okay. I want the more medical, the more technical name for that. Connects the sternum to the scapula, and it's mostly common from. I don't need to know that now. And then I will make the close deletion. What connects the sternum to the scapula? Oh, the clavicle. Or the clavicle connects the sternum to what? I could do multiple close deletions if I want to, depending on my background knowledge. And then I will do once again, because I want atomic I want atomic extracts, because we're discussing the extracts that are one close deletion away. So I need to formulate before that. Then, the same thing, just clavicle, connects the sternum to the scapula, here you go. The clavicle, most commonly fractured bone in the body is, and then what I will do, the close deletion. What is the most commonly fractured bone in the body? The clavicle. You get the point? So I don't need to reformulate once it's in the flashcard form. Neglect now the slides. You only will have the sentence. I don't need to reformulate here almost. Perhaps the quotation marks if you get triggered by that, or change the template if it was not automatic but automatically done by the concept, and that's about it. That's why it's the highest form, the highest quality of an extract. You only need to do the closation. Hope this has been clear enough. And remember, you don't have to do that. There are many ways to achieve the same result. So you can do a very lazy extract, and then a very lazy closation, even if you want to, and then pay most of the cost on the flashcard form. Then you will need to do heavy reformulations at the first or second repetition. Remember, you will pay the same price. It's just how upfront you want to pay this price. This is the highest upfront cost you can pay. You get the highest quality before the closation. So we'll focus today on the interval spacing for topics in incremental reading. You know that topics are passive review. It's reading material or hearing material or watching material, if they are videos or audios. To simplify, I will only use reading. Then you know that incremental reading is a superset of a spaced repetition. So spaced repetition is just for the items. But you know that in SuperMemo you have topics and tasks and concepts as well. Then, what happens with articles? Articles and extracts are treated as topics in SuperMemo, and topics are in the priority queue. So, high priority topics are reviewed sooner or more frequently, and lower priority topics may be delayed and are seen less often. Nice. But what about the details? Because topics don't follow spaced repetition. So they allow flexible reading, not fixed intervals. There is no way you can get fixed intervals unless you do it yourself. You override this. I have some solutions, some videos, how you can achieve this. I want an interval of every single day, every other day, once a week, and whatever. But then, you can read as much as you want, or as you can. One article on a busy day, or 100 on a focus day. So you can do one repetition and I spend 20 minutes on that repetition, or do the minimum amount of information at each repetition and do 100 repetitions in 100 different topics. Then, more or less are the two outliers. Then, if you don't finish reading, topics are rescheduled automatically. You don't have to do anything. And once you do the review, you see it, and you go through, you click on Learn, you go through the next element, it gets rescheduled automatically. Not using a spaced repetition, but something else, and a different interval spacing. And you can also manually do this. That no, I want to see this in 100 days. No, I don't want 2 days. I want 100. No, you know what? I want next week, and stuff like that. Nice. Then, are topics using a spaced repetition? No, not in the strict graded SuperMemo sense. First, you don't grade. You don't have the buttons to recall, to grade your recall in topics. Why? Because it's passive material. So in SuperMemo, in incremental reading, the reading is also scheduled. So like other platforms like Anki or Remnote, all of the learning process is scheduled. It's not when you have the flashcard and then the flashcard starts the memorization that, okay, I have already learned that and understood that, then I just want to keep it in my long-term memory. Anki starts there. That's why you have the concept of a new card. In SuperMemo, there's no concept of a new card because you start the learning process within the app already. So all of the reading, all of the understanding, comprehension is in the same app. And this can be interleaved with spaced repetition. So I can get a topic, a flashcard, another topic, and so on in the sequence of repetitions. Then, spaced repetition equals optimize intervals based on your memory grade. That's why it's only for items. And topics doesn't use grades. There's a precise optimization. What you do instead is reassess the priority. And the priority, among other metrics, will tell you when you will see this next, when it will be scheduled, how the interval is growing. They have the same in common with spaced repetition. First, there are always intervals. And the intervals are always incrementing, increasing. That's why, if you remember, I said that there are no fixed intervals. You have to manually override that to be fixed. So still, top intervals are spaced over time. They are just not optimally spaced over time. Because you cannot optimize this because there's no forgetting possible, because it's passive material. So the takeaway is that don't worry about the topic intervals. Focus on the priority and time available, the time you spend with SuperMemo. And SuperMemo will ensure always what you see is what matters the most. So if I only have time for 10% of my collection, I will get the top 10% of what provides more value to my life, to my needs and requirements. So focus only on priority. There will be more advanced things you will see in the course that the topic has 1 year interval already because it was low priority, but now because I need this on my job, now this is a lot higher priority. Hey, I want to reset this, right? Because this has changed across time. That's more advanced, it's possible, but it's outside of the scope of this video. The point is just to know how interval spacing for topics work without the jargon that hey, you have the factor, No, just the pragmatics. So let's cover the pros of a scheme for value extracts. So when you make an extract as the helicopter driver, massive time savings and efficiency. We could say more or less the Pareto principle doesn't have to be like 80%, but it's a rule of thumb. 80% of the info is in the 20% of the text. The other 80% is just fluff, fillers, and stuff like this. So you, with the scheme for value extract, you will avoid low value content, and you will focus more on the message. But remember, because in linear reading, not every sentence has the same importance, and stuff like this. So you get most of the value first. Then, the ability to process vast amounts of information. Since you discard the fluff, you only have the 20% of the real deal, you have a fifth of the volume. That means that you can have more articles. So like, let's say 5 articles of the same size for the price of 1 without being skimmed, if this makes sense. Because you have 5 times 20%. Therefore, skimming is more manageable, you have a scalability, you can import more articles, read these in parallel, and all of this, and reduce the read later anxiety. Remember that the read later is the third level of extracting. It's the same for extracting and reading is the same. The scuba diver and the helicopter driver. The only added is the read later for extracts. Then it helps you conquer the read later list. By skimming is, this, I want this, not today, for later. So this won't appear tomorrow or whatever, or when you read linearly, this once again, and so on, because you have managed that. Nice. Then, skim for value reduces cognitive strain and prevents burnout as a consequence of having less content. And especially when most of the content that is processed, it's interesting, it's relevant. Imagine facing a 40-page chapter, which is intimidating, and then I don't like this is not contributing to my goal, there's a lot of fluff, you navigate a lot, and yeah, I did a deep dive of 5 hours, but the value I got is equivalent of 20 minutes. But if you do skim, it will make learning less daunting because of the extracting. because instead of processing the entire thing, you process a subset of that you extracted before. And you have the separation of concerns. It separates the low effort task of finding information from the high effort of task of understanding it. First, you do the skimming with a helicopter. Don't worry about understanding. And then you do the understanding with detail, but everything has been scaffolded already. That's the big difference. And last is that the skimming for value improves prioritization and quality of learning. That, hey, I'm chunking this down with extracts. You can also manage this. This is higher priority. This is more or less the same. This is lower. This is dramatically lower, and so on. So this has an active filtering already and forces you to be an active, critical reader. Perhaps you don't have enough information. You will take the best decision with the available information. It's not the best, sometimes won't be the best, but it's better than nothing. And with iterations, it will become better. So you're constantly making judgments about the value, how this contributes to your goal. Remember the coordinates of the GPS, the metacognitive model. Then, maximizes the return of attention, like return of investment kind of thing. Your defocus is precious and is limited. So, we have currencies. What is limited is time. We cannot get more than 24 hours a day. The second dimension that is limited is the attention. First time, then attention. So skimming acts as a gatekeeper, ensuring that the resource is only spent on the most nutrient-rich information you can find. The best deal, resulting in a more potent and relevant knowledge base. Now we will see the cons instead. There's a high risk of superficiality. You will make mistakes. Of course we will do mistakes. Now with AI, this can be minimized because you can ask for a summary, so it will be best to know, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the effects of a space repetition in long-term memory. You can ask AI, it's in this article? Locate it. Boom. A lot easier. But while you're skimming, you can have mistake familiarity for knowledge. I am a victim of this. Everyone is victim of this. Just because the concepts sound familiar, I came across this word again and again, it reappears. That doesn't mean I know that. I'm familiar with that knowledge. I'm familiar with this terminology, but I don't understand that knowledge. Like quantum mechanics or entropy, to mention some examples. So you may feel like you know the topic because you recognize the key terms, the main ideas, while you only have a shallow familiarity. That's it. If you're in, let's say it was a book, and you're in the book club, yeah, if you ask me to say something about the book, I can say that because I'm free to choose whatever I want, only about what I read, and I understood. But if we are having a discussion about entropy, then I'm doomed because I'm not knowledgeable. So when you do those extracts while skimming, you have this risk. But remember, it's a preparatory step, not a learning act. So when you skim and, hey, there's value here, you haven't learned anything. You're preparing. If it was cooking, you're prepping the meal. Perhaps you are just cleaning the stuff you need to use. What have you cooked? Still nothing. I only prepped, I only cleaned. Right? If this makes sense. It's not a learning act. You don't follow and process extracts you create. No learning occurs, happens there. It will happen once you review that with reading with thought. We're going to see when you should engage and skim for value extract. So we have skim for value, deep reading, or read later. So when you should choose this one, it's just a skim for value. So let's see. When it's the first time you encounter any new article or chapter, it's the very first repetition appears for the first time in SuperMemo, you will just skim. What I'm reading. Remember the GPS framework, metacognitive framework. Purpose, content, will be this case, and time. Okay, so why? Because instead of committing a super long linear read and spend 10 minutes on that repetition, you first want to know what is actually there. And the outcome is that can be manageable because you chunk this down, basically. And what you chunk down then will be on the other another extract that is a deep dive. Another scenario is when you are facing a high volume of information. You have a lot of papers, articles, reports, a lot of sources to go through in 2 months, let's say. I have to process all of this. Then you skim as a triage tool. I want to get the 20% most useful sources that will provide more or less 80% of the value. Nice. Then, could be the case that you are unsure of the article's value. That, for instance, this Wikipedia, I'm pretty sure this is valuable, right? Especially as a starting point. But then I go to some place here, and yeah, it's from the 85, I wasn't even born. This could be slightly outdated. Is this worth my time? Even though it's exactly what I want. It's implicit and explicit memory with people, normal people, and amnesic subjects. Right? So what I will do, conclusions, I will decide if this is worth my time. Because sometimes it's just, the quality is not for me. Not because the quality of the research is not up to standards. Could be a fantastic and excellent research, but it's now 40 decades outdated. They are using terminology, or they are not using some of the standards today. I will have a hard time. I will have to invest more time with this. It won't be useful, or not as useful are some other sources that perhaps cite this very same article. Next, skimming is useful when your time and energy is low. Oh my god, it's evening, I've been working all day, or I have been reading for 3 hours already. Let me do something that is less demanding for my brain. Or I'm slightly ill, or I haven't slept as well as usual. So what I do is just skimming the materials, populate them in the priority queue, and all of this. So it's better to save your peak focus hours for deep learning. You want all your mental capacity for deep learning, the deep dive. And when you are in the helicopter, it's just, okay, there's value, schedule that, extract this, but I'm not going to read it now, kind of thing. And the last is when you begin to explore a new topic. That doesn't mean a source. It's a source, but a topic as well. Let's say that I discovered plants here because of memory. But I never paid attention to plants, right? How do they live? Because usually they don't move. They don't have legs or anything that they can move from one place to another, right? Yeah. So let me start reading biology of plants and physiology of plants, right? It's a very brand new topic. It's the very beginning. Since I don't know what concepts are important, so I'm so ignorant, I know so little that I cannot even plan this. I cannot even schedule this, the read later. I'm lacking too much information, fundamental information. So I skim introductory articles, quickly identify the recurring themes, and measure figures. So it's, hey, the Wikipedia article, this textbook, this again, oh, okay. For instance, if it was memory, okay, the different parts of the brain, different types of memory, long, short, but then you have the implicit, explicit, Then you have the component of biology. Ta -ta 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 -ta. Okay, I can have some scaffolding, but not the scaffolding of the source, but the topic, the concept of plans or memory. Because one thing is the scaffolding of the Wikipedia article of memory, the other is of the concept of memory, which I can have multiple articles. So therefore, you have to skim that. Now that we have seen the reading with thoughts, extracts, when to use them, now are the pros. We have three. Deeper focus on comprehension. So basically you start from what's being written, that you read, to what's called atomic units of knowledge into flashcards, right? That will be the entire incremental reading flow. For now, the extract is very taxing already. It's from the reading, you make sense, and then you make the extract. Or you already did the extract before, when you skim for knowledge, and now on that subset, now you do the read for deep reading, and this will combat cognitive overload. Because even if you cover it just once, it is a lot more memorable. It stays for you. Unlike a person who always needs to reread and reread because they forget most of what they read. And then focus active engagement. Because you select what you want, this is not only active. And then you decide, hey, I'm going to do this on purpose. You shift the mindset from passively receiving information to actively evaluating it. Is this worth my time? Is this what I'm looking for? Stuff like this. Then enhances memory and retention. Why? Because you understand, you make all of the semantic connections, understanding, all of this, and the opposite of being isolated. It's very easy. And on top of that, in incremental reading, that's the foundation of active recall. This extract later will become a closed relation. There will be a schedule with a spaced repetition for long-term memory. And on top of that, you have the gradual processing. You don't have to process the entire extract the first time you see it. So this iteration with interruptions is giving you enhanced memory and retention. Even though it may sound like the opposite is true. Because remember, the extracts are temporary. You will finish understanding. You will finish with the flashcards of what you decided to remember, of what you understood, of what you read, of what you decided to import, the final. Nice. And latest, it's better for organization and creativity. For instance, you have knowledge, you have concepts in SuperMemo. So I decide this is education, health, but let's say I have this article about memory, right? Awesome. So I will just use memory. That's it. And long-term memory will be memory, short-term memory will be the same concept. But memory and aging, where do we put this? Within memory? In aging? In health? How to prevent or have the best memory possible? You create your own knowledge base. Break down silos. In incremental reading involves processing extracts for many different articles in parallel. So could now be memory, as we have done all of the time, but now it's aging, snoring, sleep, cooking, Pilates, math. I'm changing the subject all of the time. This boosts creativity. Then prioritization. Since you chunk every extract is chunked down, especially the ones with reading of thought, you can assess a priority that will be really relevant, very close to what it really is. So you will get the most important stuff before. You will get the most critical. So you will get the most critical and valuable information first, where the other diminishing returns, which could be good to know, they will wait. They will come incrementally, and if they are not relevant enough, they will never come. They will be forever waiting. And last, it preserves context. While the extract is an independent piece of information outside of its source, it remains linked on its original source, on the parent. That's why the knowledge tree, you will see I will do it on the browser. These plants, let's say this is an extract of the calcium influx, this comes from the parent. That was this extract. Happens to be it was a secondary extract. And this paragraph comes from in plants section of the memory article, and this will be inside my memory concept in SuperMemo. What you will see in the ancestors, that now are the slides. Let's cover the cons of reading with thought extracts. We just seen the pros, let's see the cons. There's a risk of context loss and fragmentation. It's again a double-edged sword. The same thing that it's an advantage is a disadvantage, depends how you use it. What happens if you do some slide out of context because of extraction? You can lose a narrative. The author can build an argument, narrative of several pages, and this may be lost. Sometimes they recur to some strategies. They do some exceptions to make an emphasis, but you don't know because it's out of context. You don't see the sequence that, that was out of the ordinary. It was done on purpose. You can also have a misinterpretation. This is the same case as skimming for value. So even though you will pay more attention because you are defocused, you will be victim of misinterpretation just because of the context loss, because you don't have the entire source now. There's random text and so on. And creates knowledge islands. It's all like bubbles. If you're not diligent enough connecting ideas, you will end up with vast collection of disconnected facts. Remember, fact plus fact plus fact is just a pile of facts. This procedure is not enough. You need to do the mental effort to connect with what you know. That's why some people, perhaps they followed my instructions and they don't succeed. I don't see the point of incremental reading. It's because they follow the ingredients, but not the cooking process. Not because you do the extracts and all of these hard skills in SuperMemo, it's enough. You need to make all of these connections on your brain. It's not on the app, it's in your brain. So if you do those extracts as reading with thought, you can create this. Unless you make the conscious effort that, there are plants. What I know about plants. Physiology about plants. If there are so many holes, what I do is read later. It's too soon now. It becomes too isolated because I have a profound lack of the basics, the fundamentals of plants and so on. Next is a significant time and effort investment. It's super time consuming and it's also very taxing. You'll be tired on doing that. It creates an initial overhead, super expensive. You pay a lot of cost preemptively. And then most of the rest will be super cheap, super affordable in the long term. And creates the process burden. Creating the extract is the first step, but then review it later is when you will consume the time. You cannot do 100 repetitions like this, like if it was nothing. But you can skim 100 paragraphs in one day. It's not the same effort. Then, the other con is management and review overload. Since you have a lot of extracts, which you can risk of the extract hoarding, in the sense that I am not going to make the extract just because it's the best edition. It's because I do mechanically. There's value, I extract, like a robot kind of thing, and you end up with a lot of extracts. But ask all of the questions. Is this relevant for me? Does this apply to my goals? Or it's just trivia? That, it's good to know, but it doesn't contribute to what I want. So I am never going to apply that. So even if you can, you're not going to make the extract, if this makes sense. And if you don't, you do it because it's very easy, you will have extra hoarding. And the other side of the coin is the review fatigue. What is also very common in Anki users, that they have the Anki burnout. Why? Because they have been doing all of these, because of the extracts with reading with thought, they will have created a lot of close deletions. Oh yes, very friendly, very easy. Yeah, but later those close deletions, in a flashed format, item, they will become scheduled in SuperMemo. And you will have way too many. And what will happen? That if you abandon this, you neglect all of the initial effort you have put on. A successful user must be a draftless curator, constantly deleting and refining their collection. Something I learned the very hard way and very long term is to delete content. And not delete content that I imported and I deleted. No. That I imported, I processed, I did the incremental reading loop, and some of the content is sayonara baby. It's really hard to get this. If you come from a school, it will be really, really hard to delete stuff if you have put on time on it. Not the point of this video, but you will get this burnout. And as any extract type is not suitable for all of the content. That's why you need to do all of them and know when to use them. When they are procedural skill, more procedural, going with in-depth is not useful. I can learn a programming language, the computational principles of the coding and so on. But if I want to code, to write a script or an app, that's a different thing. The same of a language. I can make a lot of extras about the language and so on, but if I want to learn how to speak, how to use that language, is a different thing. That you can use incremental reading at some degree, yes, but not with this extract, reading with thought extract. And the other is when it's narrative. Again, like a novel and so on, those are very, very unfriendly with incremental reading. Because you need the sequence, you need what happens, And our narrative, there's not something to learn from, it's just a story most of the time. Let's see when it's useful to engage with reading with thought extracts. The deep diver, the scuba diver. So first, it's crucial to understand that it is cognitively demanding state, and it's for a targeted activity. You decide to do it. You cannot do this for every single sentence, every article, and so on. Okay. Then, we will do reading with thought once before we did the skimming for value, and we identified a high value section of a source. That there is a golden nugget or a knowledge gem worth the process. Easy. Then, when the material is foundational, let's say plants, now I want to learn about plants, I'm starting from scratch. The very basic and fundamental. Doesn't have to be a textbook, but it's so easy to understand. Or a seminal paper in the field. More time will be spent in this mode. In which mode? Reading with thought. Preemptively, because it's so foundational that I know that I need all of the basics. There's no scanning needed because it's the fundamental. I need to go through that. Then, when an extract reappears in your outstanding queue, so you already did some repetitions, then this could be made some days ago, weeks, or even years. This reappears because it becomes outstanding once again. Now that you engage with it, you process more deeply. Perhaps reformulate it with close deletion and so on. This depends on your style, because you can make the extract and reformulate later in a flashed form, or reformulate, then extracting. It will be in this case. When you're reading with thought, after you have done several repetitions on that topic. And that's about it. because this is very, very time consuming. Starting with thought, it's deliberate, effortful process, transforming raw information, raw info, in a structured, interconnected knowledge in your brain. That is the learning process. And it's the bridge between simply seeing information and totally own it. Remember the fact. You only have a pile of facts at the end of the day, and here you will have the true knowledge. Because you have the fact, you have the relationships with those facts. How it relates to everything else you know. The physiology I know for humans, mammals, if they are not human. And all of this, now with plants, this makes sense, this is how they reproduce. So the memory they need, I'm assuming it will be related for survival, right? I will make all of those connections. So those are more or less the cases when you want to invest on the most expensive extracting. That is read for thought. Let's see the pros of the read later extract. So it manages cognitive load and prevents burnout, precisely the cons of the other types, if you remember. Reduces stress because you will not find poor item formulation because you had time to redo very well extracts, very well formulated extracts, and then keep the review process sustainable because you don't add preemptively a lot of material in the outstanding queue because it's just postponed basically. Then enables powerful prioritization. Because since you make the active effort to decide how important is this right now, at the time of the decision, you focus on the high value items, high value material. Because the low value, it will become postponed. And this is dynamic and flexible. Your priorities will change, they are dynamic. And since you will keep doing the read later extract, you will adapt to these dynamics. You will also use time as a natural and effort filter. Because when you postpone the decision of an item, it doesn't have to be item, the flashcard can be any element, it reveals the true value. Automatic pruning of redundancy. Could be important today, but in 6 months, because you learned the same thing from different sources, now this is not important, it's redundant, so it will become deleted, or because now you set a lower priority, you won't come across the duplicates of the redundancy. It's there, but it's waiting for you in the very long term. So you never come across this again, because you have a ton of content before of higher priority. And you identify the truly important knowledge because of that. Because you keep pushing the lower priority, you can see the medium priority stuff and so on. So you see the information that remains relevant and important even after long delays of the importing. And you can commit this into long-term memory anyways. Then, the read later extract also facilitates deeper understanding and connections. Because you do this interruption, then you don't do anything until you don't require the necessary scaffolding, as we have seen in previous videos of this chapter. You do the just-in-time learning. It's now appears just in the perfect moment, just what I needed, and creates the eureka, the aha moments, and avoids wasted effort. Since you avoid redundancy, you don't waste time. So instead of starting 20 minutes for a concept you're not ready for, you will just postpone it in 2 seconds and see it later when you are able to do it. Let's see the cons, the downsides of reading later extracts. They can easily devolve into procrastination. Once again, there's always this, when you postpone, there's always this risk of procrastinate. You can avoid the hard stuff. That, this keeps popping up, and every time it pops, I keep for later, and this later never happens. And requires high self-discipline. you need to combat your own biases. You have to really be honest with yourself. And the second layer is that if you lack prerequisite knowledge, you have to be diligent and work to get that knowledge. It's not that, oh yeah, I just will wait and it will come magically. You also have a risk of creating a knowledge swamps. Constant deferral without event processing or deleting items can lead to a massive, unmanageable backlog. Now they have thousands, tens of thousands of elements waiting there. To the point that is most of my collection. Like 90% of my collection is something I keep postponing and I never read. This slows down, these swamps of deferred content slows down the system, makes the motivation to use, searching is harder, stuff like that. And as a consequence, you get get lost in the noise. Because unlike a curated collection, shows you the most important stuff, is that this is bloated with information. It's like if I didn't filter it when importing. So I have the same experience when I Google, and there's too many stuff. Next, read for later is incompatible with sequential learning. Because if I do for later, I would continue. Because if I do, I break the sequence. Sometimes you need this sequence. Like mathematics, programming languages, and so on, is more prominent in the STEM domains because you have hierarchy of knowledge. So you need basic arithmetics before you can get into percentage or division and all of that. So if you skip something, it doesn't make much sense. And makes future learning impossible. So if you skip this, yeah, you're not going to do, I don't know, limits or whatever if you don't know basic algebra. It's like trying to learn English without trying to learn the alphabet. Where you're going to read the letters, the words, if you don't know the alphabet. And next, there's a potential for knowledge to become obsolete. You postpone, and now that I read it, poof, this is from 5 years ago, this is dated. Now I no longer did that. Again, in the STEM fields, this happens that, yeah, this is good to know in AI, but the AI is progressing at the speed of light. This is from 2 years ago. Now it's irrelevant. Now this changes the topic. Instead of computing, it's history of computing already. So you may be losing the timeless, whatever is time sensitive, and some missing opportunities that you could have learned that on that period and you didn't. You lost that opportunity because it's time bound. Let's see when it's useful, when to engage with read later extract. Remember the third option, that is, read later, when this is convenient. Remember that in the context of incremental reading, read later is not a form of procrastination. It's an active and a strategic decision to make your attention and prioritize your learning. It's a feature, not a procrastination. Because not all of the information is relevant at the same level or at the same time. So the mindset, like the patient and the strategic curator. Think yourself as a curator of a vast personal library or museum. You get a shipment of tons of articles, extracts, and so on. You won't process everything. Instead, you will triage high priority stuff that is immediately for main exhibit that will be reading with thought. Interesting looking creates are scanned and marked for later unpacking. That will be skimming for value. And then we have other. The other ones will be evaluated at appropriate time and are the read for later. This mindset requires trusting the process first and your future self. A reminder that incremental reading can be described as a conversation with yourself. So you'll trust your future self. If you trust that, the system will surface that the further information when the time is right, because it becomes scheduled someday. And according to the priority, you will see it. It won't be buried in the outstanding queue. You trust that your future self, your future you, will be better equipped to handle it. To do what? One of those. Skim for value or read with thought. One of those. So when do you want to actively defer for later? So it's not going to be for value or for depth. In two ways. It happens automatically in SuperMemo. So the system extracts this over time. So even if you don't want to, it happens behind the curtains. Or when it's done manually, you, the user, make the conscious choice. No, put this in 100 days from now. So let's see when it's manual, not because of SuperMemo. When the extract is too difficult, that means there's missing information, missing knowledge, or is using jargon you're not familiar with, even though you know the principles, you know your staff, you just don't know the labels the author is using. Perhaps because in some fields of science, there's a lot of redundancy. So there's a lot of also known as, like in psychology. So it's, I didn't know this label, but I know all of the background knowledge. Or no, even the background knowledge that is Chinese for me, right? Is incomprehensible. This is one of the reasons that you will postpone. You will extract for later. Another one, when the extract seems low priority. Perhaps you extracted that on a whim, even if you want to not fall victim of that. We are animals, we are imperfect, so this will happen. Instead of deleting it, you can defer it. So that means you put it for later in time, or what you do is you lower the priority, and that's it, and as a consequence, this will be pushed for later. Even though the interval is exactly the same, because of the priority protection that we have seen, it will become outstanding, it's outstanding, and it will be waiting for you to review it. Perhaps the interval was 1 month, but it needed 3 years because of the low priority, if this makes sense. So you push this to the future, regardless of the interval, just with the priority. Then, another case is when you lack immediate context. So before going to a rabbit hole, you say, yeah, that's something very important, someone recommended me, but oh wow, it's too detached for something. Let me postpone it. I cannot put it on the right place, right? Boom. And then you may come up this naturally in all readings. And then you search for that, and then you will memorize it, or you will schedule it for tomorrow, or do the repetition right away, whatever. And the last, that you will just do a read later extract, is when you don't have energy. That I will do this in optimal circumstances, but since it's very late at night, I will do it tomorrow. So I will do it for later because it's too late for me already. So better tomorrow. It's not the right mental state. That's it. So if I come across the same extract at 9 a.m., I will have read it. Just this. Next is the loss of nuance, details, and the argument structure, because then this will be in isolation, and the overall structure of the article will be lost. Sometimes it's not a big deal, it's just how the author wanted to distribute that. There's nothing else than this. But sometimes this nuisance that the tone of the author is consistent, and there are some exceptions that is to emphasize something, you will lose that. Because you lose this continuity, you won't be able to assess, hey, there's a nuisance here in the tone. Stuff like this. Could be the case that this detail can be critical, relevant. That is one of the main conclusions for the evidence and stuff like this. Or you can ignore the author's logic. That is on purpose. It's well written, and some exceptions are done, but are done explicitly for a reason. The emphasis is there for a reason, and you will lose that. Potentially lose that. You also will potentially misinterpret something because could be out of context, and especially English, as some other languages, there are many words that have multiple meanings. And could be the case that, hey, you didn't get the actual idea. You get the wrong interpretation. A very simple example. Many people believe the world is flat. Or I say the world is flat. The earth is flat. Yeah, but imagine that it's just a phrase and a sentence. Because I don't want to spend more time. But imagine it's an entire paragraph of a whole. Then you will, but no, it's because something else before it says that it was demonstrable false notions. But I only have this extract. I lost this context. Now, this is very dummy because it's just a phrase. But it's so you get my point. And the confirmation bias. There are many biases in incremental reading because it's like incremental reading is learning on steroids. We are victim of biases, so we're victim on steroids about our biases just because of that. So when scanning quickly, your brain is more likely to notice and latch into information that you confirms pre-existing beliefs. So I want to see the effects in memory. What it is? Improving. Verbal memory, space repetition. Now if I see this, okay, I know what it is. Doesn't require space repetition. It's the memory palace, right? So I know that spacing effects wins long term. Cramming is only better in the extremely short term and has a lot of damaging effects. But if I see something that is different from that or goes in consonance, I will, since I'm skimming, I don't have time, my brain will be based on heuristics. So if there are sentences or some info that contradicts the evidence, I will be very biased to overlook them. Next, is ineffective. Skimming is ineffective for certain material. Dense logical content, mathematical proofs, legal contracts, you cannot skip because every detail is there. So it's, there's a law about this, but yeah, there are some tiny exceptions. Yeah, you really want to know the exceptions and so on. Even though they won't be applied as often, you need to know that because it's the law, right? These cases, the skimming is not useful. Or extracting for skimming is not useful. Unless you only want to know what was that exception and so on, I want a reminder. In the law you want everything, right? You want spot-on comprehension. And some other narrative and literary works. If it's a novel or a biography, it's immersive in character development, the narrative, what happens. If you do skimming, it's absurd because it's like you consume this for pleasure, for entertainment, and you're skipping. I get the idea. This character dies. Okay, and I continue. Doesn't make much sense. And finally, skimming can create a false sense of productivity. Oh yeah, I processed 50 articles in my collection. Wow. Yeah, but what you did in that hour is you created some extracts that you didn't read, like not even 5% of that, only the keywords in diagonal. This can be misleading. All you have done is populate a to-do list for your future self. You have read 5% of what you think you have read. You haven't read 50. You have read the equivalent of 1 or 5 if we are generous. So while it is still a real and cognitively demanding work, so it was not a lazy work, usually the learning has simply been deferred, not completed. There is no learning act. You have the awareness, hey, the value is there. For instance, what I have done in this sequence of videos, I know that implants have some kind of memory, but do I learn that? Not really. I don't still understand what they do. I'm aware of this fact, but I haven't learned it yet, if this makes sense. So those are the cons of scanning for value. That doesn't mean you should avoid them, just be aware of the limitations and when it's useful to use it, because you need to use it. So we have seen the granularity of extracting and the nested extraction of secondary, tertiary, and so on. We have seen this in a sequence of videos, but hey, are those the same? Turns out they don't. They are not the same. So here is like to recap, to have like the big picture and the difference between the granular and the nested extraction. According to some criteria, let's see the workflow. In the granular extraction, so you just read and you do extract, 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 and so on. You read the source, you identify the most precise atomic idea or whatever, a sentence, and you extract it directly from the source. That's it. A nested extraction, yeah, I read the source, or I start reading it, I extract a larger chunk, later I do an extract of a smaller piece of that chunk, and then I will do the closation. We can have an analogy, so it's easier to get. The granular extraction is a skilled surgeon that makes a precise incision to remove exactly what's needed. Hey, you had something, I don't know, inside the muscle, or in the brain. Boop, and they pick up whatever was required. Or, oh yeah, they were the stones in your kidney. Boom, those are the stones. A nested extraction, instead, is a demolition crew, knocking down a wall to later shift through unravel for one good brick. They destroy a lot. They make the extract into pieces. And then they get the value they want. And the granular extraction is, no, I just want this thing, and the rest is not touched. Then the resulting structure of granular extraction will be flat and wide. A lot of extracts from the same source. And the nested extraction will be deep and narrow. More or less the opposite, like the high granularity, basically. Then, context richness is very high, because you have all of the siblings come from the same place, from the same source. And as extraction is, yeah, you will need to visit 2 levels of hierarchy up, 3 levels, and so on. Just the immediate chunk doesn't tell you much. And the efficiency is also very high. No redundant items are created, as long as you then reformulate them. You make them unique. And then as extraction creates redundant items that clutter the review. Well, to simplify. Because you're not aware of what you did before and you have this narrow view, you will make more or less equivalent overlapping items. That is the same thing using different terminology, a different point of view, and so on. Keep in mind, redundancy is not necessarily bad. It's one of the 20 rules. That redundancy doesn't defy minimum information principle. You can get to the same idea from different points in a network. So more or less, this is the difference when you want granularity, from the point of view of granularity, or from the point of view of nesting. Hope this helped you to get some whole of understanding. In this video, we're going to see a few signals you can pay attention to that when is time to stop processing an article in an incremental reading. Obviously, we'll focus on the ones that you can choose. Is your call. Not that, hey, I need to go to work, or I'm sleepy, I will go sleep. Stuff like this. First is when you lose concentration. Can be for many things. Because it's boring, because it's been tedious, it's been a long while. It's just the lack of variety. It's something you dig, but it's been 2 hours or a long while, right? So your mind starts wandering, you start rereading the same sentence because you keep distracting. Your brain is signaling it's time to switch gears. That is especially the case in incremental reading if you either do a subset of the same branch, the same topics, concepts, or you just overrule that and manually pick or keep reading in sequence, which is still possible to do in incremental reading. This could happen. That's why you can do interleaving, micro and micro interleaving. So every 5 minutes, you are changing topics. Then, Forcing it will only, then if you force this, no, I will endure and so on, you will only go to the poorer and poorer quality of your learning. This will only make sense if you are forced, coerced. You have an exam in 2 days. There's no other choice you can take. It is what it is. You cram your way to the exam or you fail it. So that you lose concentration, you move on. Could be that you just move on, click on next, on learn, and that's it. And I start reading something else. As easy as that. Another situation is that the text loses its value. This is usually the case for me in Wikipedia when I go for health, something about nutrition, chemistry, but then Wikipedia starts with jargon, with the history of the discovery of the... What is all of this? I don't care, right? So the case is that at the beginning you start reading the article and it's very rich, it's something you care about, it's awesome. But then the quality, there are different ways. The quality of the text is lower because there are fillers, especially the case of blogs or stuff like that they need certain word count, and then you can tell that or it's written for machine, for SEO, for ranking with machines, that it's garbage for humans, or it's written in a way to just catch your attention and kind of repeats every time, which becomes repetitive, relevant, or unappealing, basically. So this is the perfect time to stop. It's the same as a movie, right? I don't have to watch the entire movie. If I paid for a ticket in the movies, okay. But now I only watch it in Netflix, so at any point I can pause and change to some other TV show. Same thing with incremental reading. That, hey, it's boring, I don't have to delete it right away, necessarily, but I move on. Even though it's something I was really digging 5 minutes ago. And sometimes it's just your mind tells you to stop. So sometimes it's because I'm tired, I'm not in the mood, or it's late on the day, so the timing of the day, stuff like this, is perhaps something I would have read if I would have been, I don't know, if it was during the morning, stuff like this. Is, you know what, I'm done with it, and I skip it. So you listen to this internal cue, like this, let's say, land drive, that my brain is telling, move on, move on, move on. So I don't care if it's something important, high priority, that for me was high priority, not just yesterday, this morning, that I'm not in the mood now, I move on, I will see tomorrow or next week, not now. Land drive is boss. Because the key is to avoid burnout. Because if you grind and grind and grind, yes, you will go through the outstanding queue, but at which cost? At which cost? So, to keep it enjoyable and so on, it just, here I start processing the article until here. I'm done. And I continue some other day. So remember, those are the three options when depends on you. You can stop anytime if you want. There will be some others that are for technical reasons or stuff like that you cannot. Which is something perhaps, by the way, covered in different videos of this course, which is kind of a pain. That, oh man, I don't want to stop, I want to continue and I cannot because I have to go somewhere else, right? I have an appointment or whatever. It's like a different situation. Now that we are familiar with extracting, we can do a schedule extract. So let me go to any random place. Let's use this topic as an example. It's a glossary. This is very friendly for extracting, right? So usually I will do text selection and Alt X, right? Then, ad hominem. Hey, that is actually is a rhetorical term, but is also a fallacy. I already know something about that. So instead of Alt X, I will add the Shift Alt X. And here you go. And now I have an opportunity to reprioritize. No. I want this to be lower priority. Well, it's quite low already. but lower priority. I could even change the interval, forget the index, a factor, and so on. Nice. Do you see? Now we have two extracts, the one I did regularly, 31, and the ad hominem, that is 91. It's fascinating because the parent, which is 42, when I do the extract, a schedule extract, if we use the menu, is reading and schedule extract with a shift. Is extract the selection and I schedule it for the next repetition on a selected day. But first, the day is already decided by default. I can modify it, but it's in this case it's 4. Okay, I could say a month if I want to. Then the priority is already lower. Even though the starting one was 40, it suggests 55 already. So if I don't change anything, 75 is already much lower. Because when I ask SuperMemo, hey, schedule this, already implies, hey, I want something different from the original. Most likely lower priority. So that's how you do it. We will see the use cases, the pros and cons, but that's just convenience. Remember, you could do just a regular extract, Alt-X, and now navigate there and change the priority, the interval, and so on. So the schedule extract is just 2 actions into one, so you get the menu right away, and you bypass the navigate into the menu, navigate into the element, and making the changes. Subtle touch, convenient when you have a drastic change in priority, in interval, and so on. So now that we have seen how to schedule an extract, we will see the cons of scheduling the extract. First is a loss of immediate context. This is the main significant drawback. We have the regular extract, Alt-X. So now in these videos, we're going to call it regular extract. Just to be more clear, it's just extract, the Alt-X. It's performed while the context is surrounding the paragraphs is fresh in your mind, because you will see it next time, But if you schedule the extract, however, it will be later in time. I mean, could be the case that if you do the extract, will be 3 days, and you do the schedule extract to be tomorrow. So therefore, it's sooner than the regular. But this is an outlier case, and anyhow, it is 1 or 3 days. It's very short term. Most of the time will be the opposite. It will be later in time. Therefore, you have done more forgetting. You don't remember that much the source of that extract. Could now look more orphaned because the context is completely gone, and so on. Forces you to guess the meaning, spend extra time checking the source, and all of that because it has passed too much time. One of the cons. Could be the case that you only modified the priority, and because of this, you take forever, you take years to get your hands on that extract. Just because of the priority protection, nothing else. Then, it can create a procrastination loop. Because what they do is say, I do extract quite a lot, but I don't do any extract. I don't review the extracts because those are always postponed, are always sent super long in the future. So imagine that I spend every day creating extracts, but I schedule them for 30 days. For the next month. That means that this month I am procrastinating in a loop. I'm creating the extracts, but I'm not going to review any of those. Can become like a sophisticated form of procrastination. It's very hard to see it, but at the end of the day, you are procrastinating. If used excessively, so most of your extracts are scheduled, can lead to a large backlog. Not today, but whatever numbers you're putting in. If you put 30, in 30 days. and can be a kind of purgatory. And then what happened? That those are extracts that you had done at least a month or forgetting already. They haven't properly learned, integrated to your knowledge base, and so on. So it's good to do it, but scarcely, when it's justified, not for convenience. And third con is that it may lead to redundant work. Similarly, when you do a lot of nesting in the extracts, if you schedule that, you went to the same place. So imagine the scenario. You read a long and complex text, the author might introduce a concept early, and then explain it more clearly in the same chapter. So you did the extract, the schedule extract. Then let me get some time, buy some time. So I learn from that, and I will be able to understand and process the extract. But later you realize that, hey, that actually is not required because now it's explaining the same concept. It was just introduced. I didn't know because how I'm reading the text, I didn't get to that point. So how I can know if the author doesn't tell me specifically that the stuff will be covered like this, like layers. I first do a very brief introduction, then it's processed later, then even later with more detail or in sections, right? But what happened? Oopsie doopsie, I did the extract. So when I come to the real thing, it's better I do the extracts, but I do Alt-Z, the regular extract, right? So then I preemptively did the schedule extracts. So when this pops in my repetitions, I start reading. Now I realize, hey, now this today, after a month, now it's redundant. By the time I'm doing this repetition, it's time that is wasted in redundant work. But this is assuming that happens in what you read, that some stuff is presented gradually, let's say. You never know. If you don't do the extract, because it could be the case that some other concept is not revisited, then you only had the original schedule extract. It's like insurance at some degree. Here there is a use case for a schedule extract, and it's preventing the extract avalanche and smoothing the workload. So imagine this case. I have this situation, let's say, that I use the standard extract in 15 sentences that are worth remembering, right? Something we have seen before here. Then, hey, there are too many. If I do one each day, this will take forever, right? So I did several extracts, and I will continue to do extracts, one by one. But what happens? That the interval will be for 3 days, and so on. So in 3 days, I will have a lot of extracts scheduled in the same day. So instead, what I could do is eventually, let's say the 5th, I add the shift modifier. So instead of the standard extract, I do the schedule extract. And let me decide for next week, and so on. What I'm doing is that I'm bypassing the incrementalism because I'm doing the extracts in sequence, but at least the outstanding date won't be on the same day. Will be more or less in sequence because I modify each time. No, it will be in 10 days. So I will do it once again. It's okay, let me continue. Now this, I add the shift, and that will be in 10 days. Anaphora, once again, and that will be in 12 days, and so on. Keep in mind that by doing so, as a side effect, you are modifying the priority. The longer the starting interval you set, the more the priority will be lowered automatically. So have this in mind. This is arbitrary. I set 15 to say a number that is unlikely that happens day to day, right? So then you will have a spaced over the coming days or weeks. So you don't have one next to each other and so on. Nice touch. Something that can be done anytime. You don't accumulate stuff in the same day. And not in the cases that like I had, that is like a glossary, this kind of thing, that it's for granted you will be extracting every sentence. A niche solution for a niche situation. Let's see yet another use case of scheduling an extract. So adding the shift modifier. So sometimes you want to defer the judgment on importance. So let's say that the information seems interesting, but you're not 100% sure. Then, you know what? Let me extract just in case, but let me set a very low priority. If you do the standard extract, that's a high commitment. Imagine, look at this, it's 0%, very high. If I do an extract here, this will have 0 point something priority. It's very likely we'll see it in my reps. It will be within my range of priority protection. Okay, what I can do instead is a low commitment action, like the schedule extract. It's like telling SuperMemo, hey, this might be important, I'm not sure, I don't know, I don't want to spend time verifying this. So let me see it in a few days, weeks, or whatever. So what I do is time, so the interval. I will decide, no, show it to me next week, or in 10 days, or next month. It's time bound. Or no, let me modify the priority. So therefore, I don't decide the time explicitly, but based on the priority, the lower it is, the longer it will take me to see it again. At that point, you can make a better and more informed decision when you see it once again, because now you have more information, more knowledge than before. That happens the same. You postpone it. So you postpone it on creation, and now on an topic format, on its own, you postpone it once again. Iterations. At the end of the day, it's iterations until you close the loop by creating a flashcard out of it, or you simply delete it. Here you go. That's one of the use cases for deferring the judgment and decision making, basically. So we have seen you can extract, it's SuperMemo, but we also have hinted already that you can create extracts from previous extracts, right? You chunk down before you do the closation. So we are going to cover this. Secondary and nested extracts in SuperMemo, because you can do 2, 3, 4, or theoretically any number of extracts. Nested extracts. Okay, so let's start. Deconstructing complexity. The more complex and the longer the article, the source, it's not a golden rule, but the more likely you'll need further and further nesting of extracts. Because if you're already familiar with the content, you can just do a easier extracting. Then, the art of learning is a continual process of distillation. If we follow this maxim, makes sense. We have the primary extracts. The primary extract is the first piece of text that you isolate from a large article. If we start from a source that is a book, it's the entire book, section, or then chapter, until you have what will be perhaps just an article that could be 10, 20 pages long. Then, regardless of your starting point, let's say that it's a long text, a text that you won't read in one go. Rule of thumb. So it's your starting point, a chunk of raw material that caught your interest. But what's the problem? That the extract is often too long, too complex, contains too multiple distinct ideas. It is too far away from closation. It's not atomic, it's not brief, perhaps it's not even well written at all. I mean, well written, not well written. It's not suitable for incremental reading, it needs to be adjusted, and stuff like this. What's the solution? You perform another extraction. When you make an extract, this becomes a topic on itself and is scheduled. When you revisit this, it pops up during your repetitions, then you can think that as a source once again. That this source is a subset of another source, yes, but becomes a source, and you can make an extract out of that once again. That is even smaller. This creates a secondary extract, and if it's very dense, long, and complex, I will need even a third iteration even. Nice. So more or less we have defined deconstructing complexity in the way that I need to chunk down incrementally, by the way, by extracting. That's why I have primary, secondary, and end extract. Now we have the Russian doll, the Matryoshka of knowledge. You know those dolls, that there's one doll inside another one, and so on? So here's the analogy. Inside every complex problem is a simpler problem struggled to get out. Most of the time, a very complex problem is just a combination of simpler problems. Divide and conquer. How you divide and conquer? In this case, by extracting. But you don't extract in parallel, you also do hierarchy down by iterations. Because in incremental reading you have, among other things, iterations on each interruption. So now let's start with the secondary extracts. This is no longer the source. It's a subset of the source. It's children of the original extract. They allow you to isolate a single crucial sentence, or a phrase, or a paragraph, or 10 paragraphs. So remember that incremental reading is very flexible. But we will follow the example that is like Wikipedia style, that is the easiest, and it will be a maximum 1 paragraph. Okay. Then, since you do a secondary extract, this becomes, again, its own entity, its own element. That means that I can fine-tune priorities. Hey, that's a definition, high priority. Hey, this is just the proof, or the demonstrate the main point, lower priority. Hey, this is just some of the stats, Nah, medium priority. You know what, more or less some example. It's not just the timing when it will be done, it's the priority. And if it is low, it will wait for me. So at least I can treat the information within an extract more fine-tuned, more incremental. I can even nest further. This is the same concept, but one step further. So instead of secondary, they will be tertiary, and 4, 5, and so on. I don't know if there's, they will reach a limit that is already atomic, so you cannot extract further. Then there's no such metrics in SuperMemo, so I cannot tell you how much I extract. At least I can tell you that I'm very inclined to extracting like this. I'm very incremental. And usually I do in Wikipedia, I do 3 or 4 levels, guaranteed. Unless it's something that I know quite a lot and it's very tiny, it's on a step, it's very likely I'll have a hierarchy of 3 or 4. So for me this is rather common. But 4, 5, and 6, if I have some of them, they will be outliers. There will be just some of them. Okay. But remember, that's not the point. It's not that, oh yeah, as much as possible, the higher the more granular the extracting, the better. Nope. It just means it's more granular, it's more incremental. It's then progressive. What's important, it's a progressive distillation. It's like a funnel. You start with a white mounted article, and you put it in our extract. There's less and less space, less information, less space for information, until you have to drop. That is just one memory, one fact, one item. If you do less extracts, in the sense that you will have less levels of hierarchy, but you will have more amplitude. So instead of, let's say, 10 extracts, and each extract of those have 5, instead of having, I have 50 at the end of the day. Perhaps you did 30, but at the same level of hierarchy. But there are no children, right? Then the distillation is not that progressive, but you can still do closulations. And what will happen? That in some extracts, because are more general, you will have multiple closulations. You will do a closulation here, here, and here. So instead of just one closulation per extract, perhaps the average, I'm making this up, it will be 3 or 2.5. So then, at the end of the day, the extract, the original piece or original extract, I have 50 items, and if I do a really good progression, like the Matroshka, with very fine-tuned extracting, I will have more extracts, but the number of items at the end of the day, it will be the same, 50. This is why, when you see here the knowledge tree, some articles I have a lot of topics, because are folders. I have a lot of folders. And something that is low quality or low priority I did with AI, you will see that it's very flat, and the ratio of items per total elements is a lot higher, because there are a lot fewer folders. Again, we're describing what it is. Doesn't have to be like this. The most distillation doesn't have to be the best. There are pros and cons. Remember that. Let's tackle more or less the overview of the practical workflow with extracting, especially the nested extracting in SuperMemo. So we have the journey from the raw information, what you imported in SuperMemo, to solid knowledge, what will be in your brain, is paved with good extracts. Then counter. So you do click on learn and boop, you see a long extract. You realize it's one specific golden nugget of information. There's something here I really want. You make the selection. You highlight only the crucial sentence, and you make the extraction, Alt-X, which is the next point. And the result is that SuperMemo creates a new child element. Do you see now? In the knowledge tree is a child, containing only the highlighted text. Here you go. The original longer extract is still here, but contains this highlight. So next time I see the next repetition, I will see, hey, my past self did an extract here. That's why I have this color. The exact color may vary because you can customize it. I don't use the default. And then with the original you can do whatever, because it's a schedule. You do this in parallel. So you will do anything you can do during the repetitions. More extracts, even closulations. You can mix closulation and extracts in the same level. I don't do this often, but sometimes it's the best choice. And then you have the final step. When I see this, then I will create the closulation. You had only that crucial sentence or phrase within the current extract. And then I will make the closulation. Boom. We will see the closulations in the upcoming chapters. But this is more or less the overview. And that's the workflow. Then we have seen it by passing the incrementalism. This is what is mentioned at the benefits of nesting, that even if you sacrifice the incrementalism, you can still have some benefits, like preserving the context in the hierarchy. But we're not going to do it like that. Once you do the third, the extraction, this gets scheduled. You will need to become outstanding. And now this was in 3 days. And in 3 days I will revisit this. And then I will make the closulation. And then the closulation will be scheduled in the future, not in the same day, and so on. But now imagine I have more levels. So I nest further. That means that every time I need to do the first repetition of the new element that is a topic. So it's more incremental. So, to finish off the secondary and nested extracts in SuperMemo, we have a word of caution. A tool is only as good as the artisan who yields it. So you can have all of the materials, tools required to make a sword, or a crystal glass, or a glass, let's say, that doesn't mean I will do it, because I need good skills for that. So more or less we're going in this direction. Caution, why? You can avoid over extraction, because you have seen, you can go nesting, and nesting have benefits, right, of incrementalism, but you can overdo it in the sense that it's excessive, and excessive means that you no longer get any benefit, or the benefits are very diminishing, that it doesn't compensate. The other is that you may have do this for something that doesn't require memorization. Remember, one of the points you ask to yourself is this useful? And is this worth remembering? Not because you can do it. Let's say that you have, this is an extract you are doing. Then, I want this, I make a sub-extract, an extract. I do a secondary extract, and just because I have one sentence left, hey, let me continue the flow. No, just because there's just one sentence left that is already atomic, doesn't have to be included, because if I don't care, I don't care, I don't need it. So then you just send it to oblivion or delete it straight away. Third, don't lose the forest for the trees, remembering hinting the main picture, the big picture. While the ceiling is powerful, occasionally revisit the parent extracts or the original article to ensure to have the big picture. That depends. If you have a very heterogenic priorities and intervals, that most of the stuff what I did was 2 years ago and I only did one extract last week, it's very uneven, this incrementalism. Could be the case that, let me do a subset and get this right, because I was reading and whoops, I'm out of, I need more context. It's a solution. If it's more or less homogenic, more or less you have modified priorities, so most of the inheritance have been from the source, there will be no need. Even if they are very high periods, like 3 years, believe me, I have experienced that already in 3, 4, or sometimes up to 5 years of interrupted reading. And yep, as long as it's homogenic, no big deal. And third, word of caution, it's complete the process. Because could be the case that that you get lost. You start reading, you import an article because you want to distill it, chunk it down with incremental reading to remember the stuff and apply it in real life. That's the purpose of incremental reading. But could be the case that you're lost. That is especially true if you don't fully master incremental reading or SuperMemo, that I keep extracting, and topics that are shown to me are always new, or extras I have done. Or, so let's say that I do review, and I make an extract, this contains a hyperlink in Wikipedia, let me import it. So the only thing you do, to simplify, the only thing you do are extracting, importing. From what you import, you extract once again, but bro, I never come to the place that I do the close deletion, because it's a never-ending process. You either need to prioritize well, so eventually you will see topics on their final repetition, so you will do at least a close deletion or delete them, or what you import in lower priority range, so you can get exposed to topics that you repeat. Because that means that you have a topic, you see it once or twice maximum, and then you don't see it again, because it's waiting for you among thousands of topics, right? I was there. I had a period in SuperMemo that it was like this, and I could not complete the process. So remember this. You need to get to the final stage, that is to make the close deletion. Don't over-extract. Even if you don't over-extract, so it's what it should be, with reasonable sense, it's just a side effect of not prioritizing well enough. That's why, even though it's not part of this video, prioritizing is boss. It affects in so many levels that if you don't know it right, you won't succeed in SuperMemo. There's no chance. It's like breathing. You need to breathe in order to live. Or you can do whatever you want. There's no success possible. And now we will cover why bother, or more or less, the benefits of nesting extracts. instead of just doing an extract and consolidation right away. Simplicity. So one quote that is attributed to Da Vinci, but is not verified that is his. His simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Usually sophisticated, oh yeah, it is intricate, detailed, No, it's the opposite. Nice. So having this in mind, we have the benefits of nesting. Tackles information overload. Because I have figure and figure information. That I'm still overloaded, I will do an extract, and then I will have a tertiary extract. That is still way too much because I'm new to neuroscience, but I don't have background in chemistry, biology, or anything like that, or even physiology, or anatomy, human anatomy in the brain and stuff like that. I will have a lot of concepts in a sentence that I'm lost. It's too much. Information overload. I'll still do another extract. And if you compare someone who is a PhD in neuroscience, for that person, it will just do one level of extracting. Because it won't have information overload. Why? Because most of what is in the text is already known. Then, preserve context. The apparent extracts remains available. That is true. So if you see here, in the ancestors, I will have more ancestors. So I have a lot more context. How I ended up here in this sentence or in this paragraph. Oh yeah, first memory, long-term memory, then because of that, until I have something explaining in the brain. If I only do one level of extract, yeah, it's from the source. So it's actually the same thing that if I go here, and yeah, the source is secondary nested extracts in SuperMemo. Okay. If I do more extracts, then it's no, it's just this part, if this makes sense. Instead of the entire article, oh no, it's just the introduction. Not only that, within the introduction, it's the first paragraph. So I'm chunking down also the context. If I ever need to go up in the hierarchy and get the context, I may have deleted and so on. Focused memory. Instead of asking your brain to remember the whole paragraph, you're creating a focused close relation or question and answer item in a single atomic piece of knowledge. This is far more efficient for long-term retention. Yes, you pay more upfront, the cost, and later it will be almost free. But why is this a thing? Because since you do most of the stuff, most of the learning on the early stage, you are already aware, is this how well you know that? Is this interfering with something else? Messing with something you already know that you mix that? You identify all of that already. Because you have reformulated, you have been linking concepts you already know, the information you already know, because you try to express the same thing on your own words, the words you know, This is, most of the work has been done already. That if I just do close relation, if I just do an extract, I just change he or it by the noun, and that's it. What mental effort I have done? Almost nothing, right? So it's one of the pros. And then the gradual mastery. Nesting extracts allows you to approach a complex topic gradually, more incremental. It's like incremental in incrementalism. So, or incremental cubed, or squared or cubed then. Because you have the text, then the extracts are scheduled in parallel, but since I'm very granular, I'm doing all of the things at the same time. I'm still reading the source, the parent, while I have now 5 extracts, but while I have those extracts, I continue to make extracts out of those that will become the second or third generation in parallel. While I still see the second generation item, the second generation topics that I have, the first level, while I will see some of the items I did already, the very first items, while I still continue to the source. It's the most incremental experience you can get. That's why you don't have to understand everything at once. Well, it will have all of the pros of incrementalism, to summarize. You can chip away at it, extract by extract, at your own pace. You fine-tune the priorities, what you want, what can wait, incredibly. Instead of, to simplify, a big extract will be by chapter, and a regular extract will be by page of a book. Here could be by phrase or sentence, even less than a paragraph. So imagine. It's very cool, but remember, you need to afford that. That you do incremental reading with deadlines. You're not going to do that. Or you're going to do the extracts, but revisit that extract right away. So, even though you have some of the benefits, preserving context, for instance, you don't have the gradual mastery because there's no interruption. Or the overload. Your brain, your short-term memory is overloaded. You won't have the opportunities to consolidate the knowledge, see all the connections, all of that. Even though there will be benefits of nesting, because you sacrifice the incrementalism, you sacrifice a lot of benefits. But there are still some. Now let's see the opposite, the cons. First, it creates redundancy and review inefficiency. This is nuanced, so let's cover that. The most difficult practical problem. Imagine you have a source article. You extract a paragraph from it. Then you extract a key sentence from it, for this paragraph. Now you have 3 separate topics, in your learning queue for the same core idea. The original article, which will be reviewed, the paragraph extract, which will be reviewed on its own, is scheduled, and the sentence extract. Doesn't have to be paragraph, sentence, is to make it simple. Could be 2 sentences and so on, no worries. So this is already mentioned that this is something good, which is true. But at the same time, it's also something bad. It's like a double-edged sword once again. The spacing algorithm, not the spaced repetition necessarily, because our topics, this is not spaced repetition as in long-term memorization, will schedule this independently because they are their own entity, their own topic, their own element. You will waste precious time and attention rereading the same information in slightly different forms. Is highly inefficient. Yes, as a side effect, you will start reading something you have read before. So, the most granular way of incrementalism implies some rereading, which is not optimal, it's inefficient, redundant, yes, but it's something good. It's not inherently bad, because you have a second chance. You revisit this later with more knowledge than before. You have processed other chunks of the same source and different chunks of other sources, perhaps related and unrelated to this source. So the quality of your extracts, or what you will prevent, and hey, I'm getting the sense of this, I did elsewhere, I will delete that. Compare this to, hey, I'm doing this less incremental, I do a lot of close deletions right away. But I'm not going to see them all, right? Because I have an information overflow and so on. So, this is why it's nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not just shades. Imagine that it's like a 3D gray zone. So, it's good, it's bad at the same time. Just depends how you perceive it and how you apply it and this nuisance. Then, following the same pattern, once again, one of the pros was to preserve context in the hierarchy. But at the same time, you also lose the context, not in the hierarchy, but on its own. So the body, the text that is within the extract, it is lost. The content needs to be really friendly, like the example I mentioned with Wikipedia, that I do 3 or 4 levels very easily, because are very suitable for that. That doesn't mean it's impossible in our sources. It just means that you will need a lot of rephrasing to keep this flow. If you want to do preemptively, pay upfront the cost, not do the close deletion, and then you will reformulate. So each level of nesting strips away more of the original context, making the final, most important piece of information harder to understand. Here it's very complex, so I will try my best, but my brain is telling me I will fail at this task. I have, let's say, some bad extracts that I did in the past, from many different stages. When I was a complete noob, when I was so-so, hey, here there's some good try, or no, that's something already good. Good material. Then let's continue with the cons of nested extraction. And now, the last one, it's an overly complex knowledge tree. Remember, the knowledge tree is optional. But you could say, hey, right now, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm in the 6th level of the hierarchy from the root element. This is superficial level, right? Imagine that I am in the 15th level. When I was reading a book about neuroscience, I was working on those ranges, 14, 16, normal. Because the source was very long and complex, I need to change down a lot, right? Then what happens that you create a lot of complexity in the knowledge tree. You have a lot of children, those children have a lot more children, So if I want to see, let's say, the items, there will be a lot of, I need to click here, in this case there's only 2 levels, It will be very complex. Compare this to the flat, so I have the source, and I do extract. I never nest, then I will have a lot of children, a long list, but then I know that the next level, I will have items already, because I cannot extract from extracts. So I guarantee that the grandchild is an item already. You can interpret this as a con, because a healthy knowledge base is still wide and shallow, not narrow and deep. But again, some exceptions do apply. Perhaps I do it in neuroscience because I'm a noob and I have a full-fledged textbook, but I don't do it in my entire collection. Or perhaps I only do it on one concept group that I want to be more laser precise. You know what I mean? As long as you are aware of the pros and cons, is your judgment. It's not that I do this indiscriminately, that I always do it. Or perhaps I only do it with Wikipedia articles. And that's it. So when it's not a Wikipedia article, I go super flat instead. So no worries. So instead of source idea and then constellation, you have multi-level of hierarchy, source idea, sub idea, sub idea. Perhaps another one doesn't have the sub idea, it's there. So the level of hierarchy is not constant. You have 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 5, 4, Not a big deal. For me, that it's a con, but it doesn't represent, it's not a deal breaker. And I think for most people, that won't be a deal breaker. It will be in case there are some limits, but there are none. Or the ones that are technical are absurd. Like I think you can only have 8 million elements in your collection. Who will reach 8 million? Yeah, if you are if you nest extracts, you will create more folders. Folders are just dummy, are just topics with a title that have hierarchy, that contain other folders themselves or items at the end of the day. And that's about it. So yes, this flow has a complex knowledge tree. It will create more folders. So instead of 50,000 elements in my collection, I will have 70,000 elements in my collection because I have 20,000 extra folders. And what's about it? Those are empty. They only have the title. So it doesn't run slower, the collection and all of that. Is it difficult to browse? Yes, to search. In the sense that, yes, I have more elements, more folders. So it's likely that I have more hits in the search. Which could be depends how you see it. But you can also filter what is dismissed. So you click memorized, solved with one click. So that's the difference, basically. the Matryoshka, nesting and nesting, and the filing cabinet. We have a video about this analogy. So those are the cons of nested extraction by order. Redundancy and efficiency in the long term, loss of context, and this small data knowledge tree. Then, a very quick case study, so it's fictional, but at least it's less abstract, in case you're not familiar enough with incremental reading or space repetition. So what is, more or less, this shows the life cycle of an extract. Okay, so the process. May 29th, you extract a topic. The idea seems interesting and novel, like, hey, crypto, let's invest in crypto, stuff like this, right? Okay. Then they have a spaced review, not a spaced repetition as in flashcards. Perhaps it was next day, but I needed 10 days because of priorities and so on. So I start reading. And I read the beginning. Okay. It's too novel. I don't know. I won't make any action, right? I keep a second review. 18 years later. I read again, but perhaps I read the second chapter. Sorry, I read the second chapter with reference to the first one. So not necessarily I read the first once again, right? And then, hey, I make the final decision that now this extract makes sense. Let me actually do it. So I just imported the Wikipedia article about cryptocurrency, right? This is the first repetition. The cryptocurrency, colloquially crypto, is a digital currency designed to work through a computer network that such as government bank to uphold to maintain it. I still don't get it because, yeah, I know it's a currency, but like half currency is not really there. It cannot be materialized like dollars or euros that they exist physically, right? But I still don't get and crypto because you have to calculate a lot of math for that, right? But other than that, I still don't get it. Then, next day, pum. Okay, this appears once again. And I keep reading. I already read that. Individual coin ownership records are stored in digital ledger or blockchain. I heard about blockchain, but it's a concept still that I don't really get, right? Yeah, so it's decentralized, but other than that, what does it mean? I don't know. So my current self cannot make good decisions because what is being referenced, I don't even know what is this, to be honest. So I know what is a database, a transaction, but what is this? A book collection or accounts in which accounting transactions are recorded. Okay. This is a good example that I didn't know the word in English because it's not my first language, but I know the concept. So for me, it was just a language issue. So this action is a lot easier now to take, and I will import that article, and I will create the item. Hey, what is this in English? Oh, it's ledger. Okay, awesome. But this is still too abstract for me, right? So yeah, I can ask AI, select all of this text. I can ask AI, select all of this text. So here I have a custom gem in Gemini. Look at that. I just super lazily copy and paste the text, and I get already the flashcards. What is the cryptocurrency? What is the key characteristic? What are the main three functions? What is the most common mistake? Are the currency considered to be currencies in the traditional sense? No, despite its name. Okay. Are they traded legally? Okay. So then I can go here. I can go to the software I use. If it's not SuperMemo, or if it's SuperMemo, I make the extract. And what I could do, and then I do here the flashcards, right? So just to make my point, I will do one in case you're not familiar. And here you go. Imagine I do all of these for each one I got from AI. So then I'm done. I read all of this chunk of text, all of this extract in one go. I'm already done. I'm done converting it into flashcards. Not necessarily I want to remember everything. Or perhaps AI doesn't know, but I can link this to something I already know from my collection. AI doesn't know that. Gemini doesn't know that. Only covers the text on its own. So if you can, compare this with interruptions that I read until here. Next time I read here. Next time I continue, but I don't get it. Let me start with the beginning of the chapter. And each time I will crystallize some knowledge. So now next time I know what is a ledger, the blockchain I will have imported that, I will have some understanding. So each iteration I have a better understanding of this. If this makes sense. So then, the final decision, after 2 passive reviews or a month, could have been more. Then the learner concludes that this code or this extract is not worth turning into a permanent flashcards, and you dismiss it or you apply done. So could be the case. So in incrementalism, the more incremental you are, the more interruptions you do, the fewer items you will create. It sounds paradoxical, but that's the truth. And the more upfront you create the content, because especially with AI, the more flashcards you will get, the more time commitment you will do to keep those flashcards in memory. And overall, in the future, you will spend more time because you are memorizing more trivia, more irrelevant information. So the outcome is that the learner benefited from rereading an interesting code, but avoided cluttering their knowledge base with low-value items. Precisely what we will have done with AI. This is successfully filtering in action. Incrementalism wins, but wins in the long term. It's a guaranteed win, but in the long term. And see you incrementally.